We're on.
Okay, all right, I,
7:03. Hey,
all right, can I get a motion to start our meeting at 7:03? Motion for that.
you do not need a motion to start the
No?
meeting. No. You're good, you
Roll
can start.
Call the meeting to order at 7:03 PM. Roll call.
Tony Benedetti, council liaison, present.
Donna Kopecki, present.
Tiffany Hughes, Mayor, present.
Nathan Johnson, present.
Lisa Craddock Little, here.
Eric Fisher, present.
Okay. Moving on, we need to, for the year, elect chairperson and vice chair. So,
Someone will just need to make a motion in each one, and then you guys can vote,
Okay.
however wants to apply.
all
You
right.
can also nominate yourselves. So, however you want to do it.
I nominate Donna.
Four.
Leader,
Chairperson, okay.
chairperson. No. Chairman, chairperson, yes.
Chairperson.
Chairman.
Second? Anyone?
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, you can.
I know I'm a
second.
voting person, but I didn't, a second.
You get the vote in this group.
I know.
You get
Man,
voted.
I like this one better. I don't have a vote in council anymore. Well, kind of do.
Just tiebreaker, or how does that work? There wouldn't be one, I guess, right?
No, not enough, level 5 unless there's,
Yeah.
so, all right, so in this case then, all in favor of Donna being the chairperson?
Aye.
Any
Opposed?
opposed, abstentions? Great, congratulations, then you're vice chair.
Yes, vice chair.
She's like, no.
Nate?
I would have to ask what would be entailed by being the vice chair.
Well,
If
You
I'm,
just step in when she's not there.
yeah, if I'm not here. then-
that's the primary purpose, is just
You
so
get to
that
do
there's a
roll call.
backup.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's, yeah, there's
I
really
never did
no
roll call.
added.
Huh?
I never got to do a roll call.
What, did you take over for a time? I mean, you may not, since
Oh,
she's
you
the
mean
chair.
if she's not here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't
thought
think
you meant
you do.
otherwise.
No, you can, I mean, duties can be assigned by the group in general. If you wanna take roll, I'm sure you can take roll.
Sorry, touchy topic.
Sure, I will assent to the nomination.
All right.
So,
Second?
yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Congratulations.
Yay.
Woo,
Thank you.
Yes. To be not vice chair this year.
Yeah. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about the minutes from December 4th or any changes?
I need to find it though, some awkward wording I thought. Maybe I resolved it.
In the minutes.
Yeah, I think it was that third bullet point. I wanted to know when they decided they would talk about the, he said they have. Guess not.
This is the first time looking at this. It's like, I don't know that I exactly said the council will not decide to spend any money on an amphitheater.
You may have, it's on, she took it verbatim, so. But if you, would like it changed, you can recheck it, I'm sure.
That's close enough. Yeah, I did say that.
Isn't it funny to go back and read these? You're like, I said that? Been there.
Well, it is said I mean, I don't know if somebody can say the council will decide not to do something without taking a vote, so does that matter? Or it's just really what he said?
It-
It's just an opinion
It-
in my,
Yeah, so you'd have to check with the clerk. Generally, if she quotations it, you know, then it's an exact quote verbatim from the record, right? So there's a recording you can check it against. That's generally standardly how it's handled. Otherwise, it's just paraphrased and bullet pointed. It's not meant to be a complete verbatim transcription of the minutes in this case.
Okay.
Is that how these are done? They listen to the recording?
Yes, she does. She listens to
That's
me.
gotta be rough.
Well, it's
It's, yeah,
time consuming, not necessarily as rough as it is, imagine our 3 hour.
Well, I know if the audio is as good as the Facebook, or what, you know, it's hard to hear.
It's not bad, but if there's a problem, then she has to go to the other recording. So it's a process.
Okay, so I guess not hearing anything, let's go ahead and move to accept the minutes as presented. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I think I'm supposed to do it, because I wasn't actually at the meeting. I know we said we could vote for it or not, but you don't really need me, so. Abstention.
yeah.
All right, and then we do have the code enforcement report here.
Yeah, this is, you know, I see another cement patio permit here, Eric. I mean, now, we've got a new mayor now, Eric. Okay, so maybe we can get into the issue of, that I've been bringing up for months now about what we need permits for. I've been bringing this in here I see cement patio permit. Where in our code does it say you need a permit to do a patio?
So if the mayor so desires, I will put time and effort into preparing a report for you that shows where everything is mentioned or referenced as to how you would get a permit for stuff. But I will have to talk to her and see what she wants to, what kind of hours, but she has to dedicate my hours to it. It's not something I can produce for you right off the top of my head. I've got to prepare a report for you.
Is that you're apparently telling people that they need to do this, so I would think that you'd already had seen
Yeah.
in the code.
I will prepare a thorough report for you, if it's the mayor's desire, and I'll get it over to the group.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Since we're talking about it. Is this something I can go just in, and this is probably one of my dumb statements of the day. Is this something I can go on our own particular codified ordinances and find out what we have? Or is this mixing again between the Franklin County thing and
No.
the this and that? Okay,
No.
so
No,
you're
it's
getting
in-
this information
this is-
strictly from,
This is, so anything that we collect permits for from Minerva Park are from our codified ordinances.
Okay.
So it is a lot of reference points in the code at different places for different materials and what you can require permits for. So, and I can go over that with you later. It is a much longer discussion than what Tony would like to understand. And so we can prepare a report, I can go over it with you, and we can present it to the group at another meeting. But it'll be some time dedicated to it.
so here's a quick question, and this is just a quick question, cause I'm not gonna repeat what somebody said earlier today. So, for a cement patio permit, is that something that we actually do require? Or is it something somebody just stopped in and said, here's my check and here's my
No,
paperwork and left?
We do require it.
We do require it?
Yes.
If it's over how many square feet?
It's not over a square footage. So when we get into patios, we have the right to require them. And the reason being is that you don't want people pouring, this is the primary reason, you don't want people pouring them into, basically you want them to know where their bounds are,
Right.
right? There are setback requirements in different parts of the code as to how close to the property line you can actually put a patio up to.
So here's just a regular general question, and maybe this is going back too far, and we need to start from where we want to go and that maybe that's the thing. Where do we want to start from, and what do we want to have done, and which way do we want to go? I don't know how many people have actually done this, or, I mean, it boils back down to, in the old development, I'm not sure that most people do get a patio permit,
May not.
or a deck permit, or different types of things. So I think, here's what I would say, and if everybody on here is in agreement with it too. The reason that I actually brought this in, is because this was the only piece of paper that I could find, I'm missing the other one, in the MPCA bags. I had actually brought the papers, when we were gonna have the other meeting, and now I've misplaced them.
So that's in the packet? packet?
These,
That-
yes, this is in the
It may be
packet.
the older version too.
This, yeah, this is, so there are actually, there's another one in there that I thought was absolutely crazy to have in there because it was information that I'm looking at it going, really? So there were 2 pages that I've asked for them to not put in there until we review them. So, and I'll get it and make sure that it's on there, yeah, cause this is still the Scott Dollinger
Yeah,
and
that's
all
the
of that, so, I don't know if we know what we want to have a permit for. I think the hard part is, you know, once everything winds down with MI Homes, let's just assume you stay, but let's just assume you don't stay. Right now, if somebody walked in and said, do I need a permit, we're all going to stare at each other, and I'm just telling you what we would do in here and you can agree. Becky and I would stare at each other and go, I don't know, that says we do and that says we don't. So I'm just telling you in-house, it's call Eric. And that's our answer, because we don't have, none of this is actually accurate.
That particular sheet, there is a more accurate sheet.
But even at that, she said that my understanding was, she did 2 different ones and she sent it to you and it was never finalized, cause I actually asked her for it today.
We'll just we had a lot going on at the end of the year, so
Exactly.
we'll get back together, now that
Okay.
the transition, let's go over everything. We need to go over everything anyways, this is
Okay.
one of those other
Because
items.
I would like to know, I mean, and it boils back down to, you know, the thing that we're trying to do inside, that I'm not taking over your guys' meeting, is when somebody walks in, if Becky is at lunch, I should be able to talk to somebody and help them as well. I feel like I can wear that role, I feel like I have no problem doing stuff like that. I can't help any of them because we're all just kind of looking at each other going, okay, do we,
Primary
or
So
do
this
we
would be-
not?
this sounds like it'd
As the
be-
mayor.
Right, well, I can't
It's
answer any of those
uphold the
questions.
laws of the village of Minerva
Right.
Park.
Sounds like it'd be a useful exercise then, so we
Yeah,
can take that.
I think
on
it,
and
I
do
mean,
that.
I would love to see it, because again, moving forward with the new website that we are, moving forward, and that's on record. These are the things that I want it to be on there, so obviously I want it to be accurate when we submit the information to them, and that's coming like in the next probably 3 months.
I can
So
tell
I
you,
would
Eric,
love
you're-
for that to be all ready to go,
Yeah.
and people can just, do I need a permit, they click, I mean, she gets, I don't know how many phone calls a day, just, do I need a permit for this, or do I need that, so that was my blurb, and you led me into it, so that's all I gotta say.
Wow, and I've already, you know, your assumption that the code that requires or the code that talks about use of the right of way, meaning that you need to get that permit to redo a driveway, that's wrong.
No, it's not, and we're allowed to require a
See,
permit for an apron. We are absolutely allowed to do that under state code. We have that right, and it's in our code, and we can require it. People who have access to the right, when they tear up their apron, we absolutely do. I can say that hands down, we do. That is law,
See,
so.
this is where we're gonna have to get the law director.
Yeah, he's already told me that, so I already know what the answer is. I've dealt with this in multiple municipalities and jurisdictions. I already know what the answer is.
And I-
But if you want the law, if she can direct the law director to give her an opinion on any of these things you may have concerns with.
And and I'm not gonna agree or disagree, but I'm going to say, in the past, 6 months ago, I can state this, my best friend's dad has done numerous work in here, and they've never gotten a permit for a
That's-
driveway.
And that's completely
So,
not unusual.
It's not, so
No.
here's what I don't wanna
And-
do. I don't want to make ABC contractor get a permit, or we stop work order, but yet BCD is over there and we're not stopping them, and they've been doing it
If we
for.
don't know, we
But
can't
really-
enforce
But
it.
that's,
The conversation needs to be, with regards to all the permitting, is what does this group, the Planning and Zoning Commission, would we recommend to council that we require them to get a permit for a driveway? Because, you know, despite what you're saying, it has never been done before until you came aboard, that people have been required to get a permit to resurface their driveway.
I'm not about resurfacing, specifically maintenance items, I'm not discussing that at all. I'm not discussing that at all. You and I are on a different page, and so I'll go over stuff with the mayor. I'm talking about the aprons that are in the actual right of way, we have a right to regulate. Because there was a question about that, if someone tears their apron out, we have a right to regulate
The title of
that.
the code that you cited was use of the right of way. The
Correct.
person who has a driveway has already been granted the use of that right of way for their driveway.
They have the
So why
right
do
to
they have
use it,
get
but
the
when they,
allowed to
because
use
when
it?
they're connecting, I don't know how much longer you want me to deal with this, but as I have already described to you in detail, I think at one of these meetings, and I don't know why you're not hearing this, when someone tears it up and they're attaching to our street, we have every right to regulate that attachment to the street, just as every other municipality does. I'm not gonna repeat it again.
Okay.
Not gonna repeat it again.
Okay, I don't disagree with that.
That's how we
But-
regulate that.
But when did we decide we were going to regulate that?
When someone
That's
came
the
in and started
pro-
tearing it up.
That's what you're not
No, we have a
grasping
right
from what
to
I'm
do
trying to
it.
say, Eric, is that has never been decided by council.
So here's
that
the
we
thing,
wanna have
here's the thing,
people
if
get a
this
permit
mayor
for
would
it.
like us to allow people to come tear up the roadway, and I know streets are her specialty area, okay? If she wants to tell me, Derek, don't bother with that, by all means, we won't do it, okay?
Here's-
But in the
here's-
past, Lynn wanted us to do it, and we followed through. The mayor has the right to require that, and we have the right to regulate it.
Here's how I'm
Simple.
gonna say it, I think, here's where I think the disconnect is. We've never done it, now we did it here, but I know that there was at least 3 driveways that was put over on Woodley, ripped out, put back very recently, and I'm going to assume, and I can only assume, because I know who one of them was, that they didn't get permits. And I know that you can get away with it if you don't catch them, and or if they're doing it on Saturday, and
Happens.
I fully understand that. But I think, again, where the disconnect is, some people get away with it, some people don't. We need a more uniform way to do it, because
And
I don't wanna be citing one company and another company getting away with
so we
it 10
can't-
times.
We can't obviously, unless, so the argument here, where that logic can go is, well, we can't evenly enforce it, is what you're saying. Even if we
Well-
can regulate it, and if we don't evenly enforce it, why enforce it at all? Maybe one pathway, but I don't, from a
Well, and I
staff
don't
standpoint,
disagree,
we
and-
wanna control it.
I get what he's saying, do we want to enforce it, that's gonna be number one, but number two is, let's just use the driveway. Even if they didn't get a permit, 2 weeks later, when Calvin's driving past and he sees that that's a brand new driveway, that's when you go put a little note on the door saying you owe $25 and you should have had a permit,
Yeah,
and at least the
I
next
agree.
time they would know.
Absolutely agree with
So I
that.
feel like, again, if
They're actually able to be
don't
double
spray.
fined under our fee
If
schedule.
we're going that way, we need to take it that extra step. I'm not saying that's the neighborhood we want to be in, I think that's this group that can do it. So, what I would like to do is work with you and I put together a list, bring it back for them to, because I don't wanna be the sole person to make all those decisions. I think listening to your guidance, this is why we do this is why we do this, cause I've talked about the roofing permits. And then bring it back to you guys to say, okay, do we really want to make people do that? So just because him and I think that this is the way, and then he can fight out with you guys, this is why we think we should have one.
I'm not gonna fight,
So-
give you my advice, and you can take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Very simple.
So, if that's okay, Tony, him and I will go through the whole list, and then I'm gonna bring it back to you guys to make the final
How about that
decisions.
list right there?
Well, I don't know if it's this list,
No,
but-
there's
You
a,
need to- you need to
That-
look
bigger
at
list.
that, and the fee schedule has other things on there that, I don't know where that, not because there's something on the fee schedule that means you have to get a permit, and I don't remember offhand, but there's things.
We'll bring both out at the same
Look at
time,
the fee permit.
because there's a fee
I don't
issue that we
remember
have on something
the fee
totally
for
different.
Council approves the fees.
$250.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was approved by council at some point in time. So that wasn't a fee that so let me make this
This
straight.
doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah, I don't
The
take
one that
those fees. I make
doesn't.
suggestions for fees, council adopts the fees. That's how it works.
Can we make a recommendation from here to change a fee that's on the permitting
You can
schedule?
absolutely do that, and if council as a whole may change the fee schedule, usually it's done once or twice a year, depending on, like, for example, when we deal with the schools, we're gonna go through and absolutely
Okay.
adopt some fees for that, for example, for their buildings.
Cause there's a
So-
fee on there that we really wanna discuss.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to talk to Calvin about the propane tanks?
Yeah, do you wanna discuss that here?
Actually, let me interject, 'cause I got something that ties on to what we were just talking. So please, I'll just preface by saying, don't take this as gospel, cause I just skimmed, part of the code just now. It looks like, there is a permit required for, cement patios. It's under major remodeling. Although I will
That's
say
one reference to it, yes.
there's a caveat though, because the wording, whether it was transcribed incorrectly or just
It is
originally was written incorrectly.
not the best.
It's not the best.
No, that's the best way I put it.
So it's a little.
It could be cleaned up.
It's
but
a little
it-
weird. The
It
other
is, it is a reference, and so
Okay.
we can follow it.
Yeah, yep, and the other thing I will notice is, and I don't know if this is how we normally operate, but it looks like, again, just from briefly reading the code, that all building permits, including patios, have to come through P and Z for approval
No,
first.
It's
not
all
anymore.
permit, it's all applications for
anymore.
permit.
No, probably.
The key that you have to understand with that is it's all applications for permits have to go to planning and zoning. That's the way it reads, Eric.
Not
All
in,
applications
not
for-
under planning and zoning's code anymore, it certainly does not. We can read it if you want. We changed it.
There's something that
We-
said that unless there's another.
There's a
another
reference that's
section.
not appropriate anymore perhaps in the code, but we changed, This body changed the review of codes, at some point, I have to go back and look, 17-ish, because they did not want, yeah, you guys were on board. They did not, you didn't want, there was no need to review administrative items that weren't variance related. So private items, fences, houses, all that stuff was taken away from, or voted away from P and Z from a duty standpoint. So they don't review all these permits anymore, they don't do that. Public items, anything in the public venue, whether it's the school, this building, roadways, parks, all come through this body from a permit approval process. So there's no administrative approval in that regard.
So does this group wanna
Well,
read?
for major remodeling,
that.
it says, sorry, processing fees, initial permit shall be paid upon approval of planning and zoning commission.
Yeah, that wasn't a
At the time
preference
of-
that was eliminated at the time, it wasn't caught, so, but it doesn't apply anymore.
But it does.
It's still- I mean, it's
apply to
still-
some of those
No, it
things.
does not.
does-
It's
Eric,
still in
it
this
applies
version of
to
the
a
code,
building
but
I know,
maybe it may
I
not
know.
be.
All
I know, I know.
applications for a building permit have to go to planning and zoning. That
So,
hasn't been
so the
changed.
way that that's been altered is that both with the duties, and it has been changed, and then you have a contract with the residential building, building department, which is Franklin County at this time, you have a contract, you have an agreement with them. And that's the law director, and Tiffany, I just directed the law director, we don't have to spend more time on this, we can go offline and discuss all
No,
of this
I
stuff.
need to have a meeting, Mayor, with him, the law director, to get to the bottom of this, cause
So-
I'm tired of going
Nothing
around.
possible.
Should take that portion out.
It needs to be adjusted, yeah, there's a number of points, and again, we get back to code, there's a number of points, and it'll be obvious once actually, it'll be a good exercise as we go through it with the mayor, we'll stipulate all that, because there's a number of points that need to be adjusted. And this was talked about back when we originally did it, we tried to catch certain codes, at the time, but our code books were still not thorough, right? I don't think we had our codified ordinances online at the time.
2017 is when,
Yeah, there was a changeover, I think 18 things went online, and I'm just trying to
Yes.
think of dates.
through 17,
Yeah,
the
so,
things through 17.
so some things, there was some confusion as to whether the codifier would catch some references or not. They obviously caught some stuff with the police stuff and didn't catch some stuff with some other areas. So it's
Yeah.
stuff that has to be cleaned up, nonetheless.
And Diane's actually working on that right now. She's already given them the new list through last year. Tony, do you know? Through last year? She gave them a list of things, but they're so backed up right now, it's gonna
Yeah,
be a while.
I
So
believe it.
maybe if it's something that we do catch, maybe we can
Yep.
kind of
So
send
I
them a
think
message.
as we go through the exercise, you'll see where there needs to be a change, and then it has to go through one of the bodies, it could be legislative committee, or start in P and Z as we go through the discussion, and then bump it up to legislative. And then either way, you'll get your code adjusted, and you can adjust your permits that you wanna collect at the same time. It can be a catch-all at that point. So either way, you can fix your problems, and it can be in whatever voting agreement they can be in.
Yeah.
Where does the one true code to rule them all reside? Is it on a piece of paper somewhere, or several pieces of
It
paper?
doesn't really exist that way.
Okay.
It does, I would say the online version is the closest you can get to the code that rules them all, because all those books, for example, for years people would utilize a bunch of different books and nothing was consistent.
In theory, is there like a written record of whenever, it's evidently not
In-
correctly reflected online, is there a hard copy somewhere?
It is
where-
correctly reflected online, but it's not up to date. Like, for example, ordinances that may have been changed at some point last year may not have
Correct.
altered the code
Okay.
online yet.
That's
So-
a year behind or
So you would have to go back
Okay.
and look at your ordinances,
Gotcha.
anything that you were aware of, like, did we change a bunch of building stuff? So you'd go back and just pull the references, all that stuff is online, but then that takes precedent over what's in the code book.
So the codified ordinance book was the discussion that I had with you. They're missing.
Okay.
We have a new one, and then every time something is updated, they're supposed to send us new inserts, and we're supposed to take them out of the old books, put them into the new books. However, those old books are missing.
Okay, yeah,
So we're getting things straightened out. So this is
We're
just
working on it.
part of the process.
Gotcha.
So, and then, yeah, we'll continue to
Very good.
see what we have to do with that. Okay, so
Back to the propane tank, sorry.
we haven't, okay, so let's start on the code enforcement. Look, I'm taking over Donna's job.
This is a call
Hey,
that I
you can
got.
backhand me at any time and tell me to shut up.
The code enforcement officer has given a resident, a friend of mine, a notice that he's not allowed to have propane tanks at his house. And told him that you can't even have the tanks for a gas grill are not allowed.
that. He did not
Well,
say that. That's
the
a
name-
falsehood.
Well, the guy said, I asked him twice, are you sure he said that? He
He
says,
did
it's
not
got a
say
flame, okay, well then, it's gonna be his word against Kelvin's word.
Yeah, we're
But,
not
okay, but that really
enforcing
doesn't matter,
things.
that's the least of the issues here. The issue I have is that if we want to tell people they're not allowed to have propane tanks, there should be an ordinance or some description that you're not allowed to do that.
So, are you talking
Do you want me to
small
spend 30 minutes on
buildings
this?
or like one
No, we're gonna
and a
spend
half?
5,
Five, very
It's,
good.
it's his garage.
because I think, again, it still boils back down to
Don't doesn't need to be
the look
buried.
of the, I mean, it does, it goes to, what do you want people to be able to store outside of their house, what do you not, cause the other one that that is an issue right now is the same, it's different.
So these, I'll just quickly go over this. These are the propane tanks in question. You will note that on the house, these are giant 4-foot tanks. These are not your standard propane tanks. The gentleman in question also admitted to Kelvin that he works for Columbia Gas, and he brings these home and he stores them. Now, the problem we have from a zoning standpoint is we have several issues here, actually. The biggest one, I think, is actually beyond simple propane tanks. Do we want to have propane tanks or not? The issue is, you can see the flammable thing here. This is actually a nuisance, this is a hazard nuisance is what this is. This is how I would first start with that, okay? So what we've got is we've got a gentleman bringing home his work product. We don't know how filled these tanks are. We don't know what condition they're in. He's storing them in a residence. In a residential zoning district, we do not allow nuisance hazard materials on site, no matter what it is, to be stored like this. It's typically, you would have an issue with it because, as we know, and we see in the news from time to time, stupid things in residential districts happen. Explosions, gas stuff, all that kind of dumb stuff. And
And it happens with the gas line. that
so,
runs-
that's right, that is correct.
That runs everybody's
So,
house.
but however, this is a controllable item that we can see from the right of way and we can enforce.
It's
So,
been there for 10 years.
so if I'm
10
being,
years it's been there.
so time is not the issue here. How much time? If someone does something we think is illegal or not illegal, that is no different. You can be murdering people for 10 years and they finally catch you. It's the same deal, right?
I'm just pointing
So the
out,
fact
Rick.
is, I will finish this rendition here. The fact is that he's doing this. We think it's an illegal action, number one, because it's nuisance hazard. Now, what he was cited for is, he was cited for debasing the neighborhood and for having hazardous nuisance materials. And if you have propane, now if we wanna have artwork made of propane tanks and we think that's a good thing, you can make an exemption for that, right? Then he can have all the propane tanks he wants in his front yard. But right now, as the code reads, we feel that this is a nuisance, a hazard, and it shouldn't exist like this. There are no issues with properly keeping a propane tank for your, a small 20-pounder for your grill, attached to your grill in proper storage, right? But let's say somebody, where does this end? Where people, I'm not done. Where do we allow people to have this? What if they have 10 little 20-pound propane tanks just sitting in the backyard? That's, in my opinion, a debris issue in the backyard and not conducive with the quiet enjoyment of your neighborhood and your neighbors, and it can be a safety issue. So I've got a number of issues with this. Kelvin's not in the wrong, in my opinion, for how he's citing them, because you can go from different directions. Now, if the mayor tells us that our subjective read is incorrect and we shouldn't be enforcing that, then we won't enforce it. We've got plenty to write up. And that's the end of the story, so I would take it up with the
You know,
mayor.
Eric, you're entitled to your opinion, and
And you're not my boss. So
I
talk to the
understand
mayor,
that,
that's it.
Eric. Now listen to what I'm trying to explain here, is that there are people in the country, or in many places, that have their own propane tanks in their yards, that heat their homes, in Delaware County. This is not, in and of itself, a safety issue, because it is allowed in many places throughout the state.
This is not a propane tank heating system.
What?
This is not a mechanical item used to heat your home.
That is what he uses it for, to heat his garage. That is what that's used for.
The storage outside.
Yes, he heats his garage with this.
I would have an issue with that. That's almost a building code investigation. I mean, it'd be
But
questionable how that works.
Show me again, this is the thing again, Eric. Show me the code where it says that that's not allowed.
It's not allowed if it's kept in a dangerous condition if he's just storing it. Now, if it's doing it
He's
for his
not-
house, now what I'll
it's-
tell you is that what I see flammable liquid out there, right? He didn't explain this to Kelvin, okay? Now that if it's an issue where it's heating his garage, now I've got a question of does that meet building code? Is that legal from that standpoint? And we would bring the building code guys in now, from what you're telling me, to look at it, because that's a whole different angle, right? We don't regulate how it's used. It may very well be a completely legal use of heating the garage and the way it's set up. However, I would guess from my knowledge of what I see there and from how these things are usually handled, that there's a problem, okay? And we can have the people who regulate that come look at it. So
How does Franklin County, this isn't a
they are
building
building
code.
code. Oh, absolutely it is.
It's an existing, it's been there for 10 years.
I realize you're an expert in zoning and building code, but in this case, I would call in the people who are paid to do this type of thing and look at it if that's so what the mayor desires. So, and that's, I'm not gonna spend any more money on this.
Okay,
time on this.
so
I
we'll
mean,
move on to the next one, at least for right now. Okay,
Can I just say, he was cited because it's debasing the neighborhood.
I agree, that's
So that's
exactly
not,
why.
I
It's a
mean,
primary
I
and it's a nuisance
haven't been
hazard.
there, but what I see from the picture, I agree, so the other part might just be moot.
Might be,
What
yeah,
the heck?
it doesn't mean
I mean, that
zoning.
he wasn't cited because it was a hazard.
Yeah, well, no, it was cited as a
Both.
nuisance hazard, it's a both issue. If you're
Okay.
storing, things are not just junky, like I'm not storing wood in my front yard, right? Gas obviously is also a dangerous material if it's not stored properly, all right? It can explode, it can
Right.
cause problems, it can injure
Well,
people.
but he was told that he's not allowed, he has to remove them. If it is debasing the neighborhood, in the corrective action, it said that he could put it, cover them up, cover it up. So getting rid of it isn't the only way to resolve this issue.
Correct, I don't disagree with you on
Well,
that.
but
There's
that's what
other
he
ways to
was
handle
told,
it.
is that
So,
he needs to get rid of it,
it
or
can be
he.
stored in a safe manner, okay? So that's another way to handle it. I
Well,
mean,
that's why he brought up that he's with the gas company. That's what his training is in.
it
Is
doesn't,
that why the cone's there, to let people know that it's a
I don't know,
hazard?
but there is a
Don't run
flammable
over it?
thing, like, but I can imagine that, listen, if it's in view of the right of way, I mean, I have several concerns about that, right? I mean, people, it's not just that it explodes, it becomes a attractive nuisance is what we call it.
Yes.
Where other people, I could see it, it'd be trespassing, but, kids do stupid stuff and they go up and play around and maybe it falls on somebody. I mean, those things aren't light either, they pull it
He's
around.
got them
Kids
attached.
do stupid stuff. I mean, we have multiple concerns from multiple angles. So, it is an enforcement action, it is in process. Take a complaint up with the mayor.
Okay, so I didn't, and these are just learning experiences, I didn't know you can have a blinking sign, you can just have a sign that's not allowed to
Yes,
blink?
that
Oh,
is, you
I
can't have a
didn't know.
rotating or blinking sign.
Okay. And then, I know I'm stepping ahead on this one, but the semis. Letter 1, letter 2.
Had a nice discussion today, actually, with the ownership, and they're equally unhappy and are gonna proceed with legal action against their tenant to get those removed.
So it is a tenant that's doing
It is a tenant.
Is it a, so I'm talking about at 2999, there were 7 semis parked in
The cabs.
299, the front half of them. And just as an FYI, somebody texted me, I went by, I saw it, I sent a message to him, I sent a message to Calvin, and they already knew, they had already sent a letter, so that was my little plug for them. They were already on it, they'd already sent letters, they'd already had pictures from weeks before, and I was just curious what the update on that was. So
Yeah.
is it a trucking company that's doing it,
I
or
don't
just?
know what the tenants, he's got several transportation offices in there.
Okay.
So which of course perfectly legitimate use if you have your office, your administration, and it's fine. However, at some point, someone thought it was a good idea to start bringing their cabs on site. And it not only causes us consternation, but the owner, he just got the letters, because they're in New Jersey, so
Right.
he's reviewed them, and he was pretty furious because, as I suspected, I mean, those tear up your gravel.
Oh,
asphalt.
absolutely.
They're just gonna rip up your, it's gonna cost him more money.
Okay.
And it's a no-no, it's not allowed in his lease either, they can't do things that aren't allowed by code, and that's not allowed by code.
Okay.
So, he's gonna take care of it one way or the other. He doesn't want us to, he knows that we have to cite him, and he respects that, but he's gonna get that handled.
Oh, yeah, good. I'm done with the code enforcement report. For right now.
Alright, we wanna move on to the next item?
Don't look at me, I'm not the chair.
Okay, yes, I think it's time to move on to village planning.
Alright. Green Space Planning, I'm gonna put a pin in that, there's a lot of things going on. I don't have anything to represent to you this evening, so we'll move that to another agenda, which I'm sure we'll get to talk about our next meeting schedules and stuff like that. So, I do have in front of you, an example, well, draft version of an annual sidewalk maintenance program, for the village. So, this is just a kind of a surface look at it, it's front and back. There's actually, there's a bunch of ordinances that council would have to pass to adopt this, so this is more of your non-technical paraphrase that, residents will see and, will be utilized as a criteria. This is based on Westerville's code, which seemed to be the simplest of a number of municipalities. But from council standpoint, there's gonna be a number of things to consider about the details of how you're handling your sidewalk program, which we'll get into at council, but for P and Z's purposes, this is kind of the baseline for, to start with from a draft standpoint, and then you guys can adjust it as you want, and then obviously when we get a legislation, we can talk to them about, to council about how they would implement it.
One of my questions would be, does this go for curbs too, or should we be doing something for curbs where there are curbs?
Yeah, so the short answer to your question is, yes, we should, but curbs are not something that the resident is responsible for.
Okay,
Curbs are something that the municipality is responsible for, as part of the street maintenance program, right? You've got some challenges in the old section with where curbs are, or where they should be, and where they're appearing, and you'll get to those as you redo your streets with proper curb and gutter, with millions of dollars you spend over coming 15, 20-year timeframes. So it's a whole, well, when you tear the street up, you'll have the opportunity to put down curb, and you'll be able to repair your sewer system properly, and eventually you'll have to do it.
And
So-
over there, the curb and the gutter is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being great, they're like -10. I mean, there's some sections that, there's some
I think
sections
you
that
mean
Our
over
curbs-
across the.
our
over
curbs
down this
below
way.
the road.
Oh, yeah, you guys
Might be
don't have
worse
any,
than
no. Well, it's almost,
Well, they-
because it's no, because you guys don't have any, it's better than what they have,
We do
because
have
it's,
them.
sort of,
They're just hidden.
yeah. I wish those were
No,
hidden.
seriously.
I know, it's just.
They're-
but-
yeah,
but
it's all
they-
bad.
But a proper curb and gutter, there's a proper design, there's a proper standard to it. You really can only do it right when you have to, you will eventually rip your roads up, and you will eventually just put it all down at once, because that's the cheapest, most efficient way that you see municipalities doing it. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's bad.
You can't put a curb in without tearing the road up.
Right.
You actually have to do it at the same time. There's just no way to lay it right.
So there's a,
Over there's sections that are just, the actual gutter itself is mud, the concrete's gone, and then, you'll have chunks like this out of it. There's sections that are gone over there, but they were there. I mean, just rubble, most of it's rubble. It's not, you could call them curbs to an extent, but yeah, there's some areas that are. No. Alder Vista and
Oh, okay.
Maplewood,
Yeah.
Lakewood, all of that area over there. Most of there's a couple good sections. We'll definitely go with, there's fewer good sections than,
In better section,
Yeah.
aside from the new neighborhood, which is done to standard.
Jordan Road's fine. I mean, we have a couple little chunks, but ours are great. I mean, again, 1 to 10, we're an 8. They're -8. So, and
So,
we're
yeah.
responsible for it.
Yes.
So, and yes, I have had complaints over the last 2 years, big time, coming from residents over there that want their curbs and gutters fixed. But,
are they happy to pay for it?
no, because it's our responsibility.
They are technically.
Well, I don't mean that, but obviously
Oh, yeah.
it's coming out of taxes.
Oh,
They
yeah.
are paying for it.
Oh, yeah.
Has to be all planned for,
Okay.
budgeted for, and bonded for, so.
And this is something that
So,
we had talked about, yeah,
That's right.
putting the X's on it, I mean.
correct. It's the same type of program, simple to understand, straightforward, nothing too crazy where you get, we try to keep it as simple as possible. I think it's the best way to go for the village.
And making sure that it's in the books that residents do in fact understand that the sidewalk is theirs.
That's right.
And I think that is the most important thing, to get it done sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Working out some of the details, but making sure that, because, let me just ask this. I mean, I understand it's thought that it's theirs, but do we have anything as a village, since we don't have any?
Yes.
Do we as a village have anything in our codes that basically say the
Yes.
sidewalk is yours,
You
as
have,
we
you have
state?
some basic language,
Okay.
in a section, that's, because somebody, like many municipalities, you pulled in this code
Okay.
from somewhere else. And with it, you brought in code that related to sidewalk, even though you may not have had any sidewalk
Okay.
at the time. So,
That's all I wanted to
It's,
make
I
sure.
found, I looked forever, and it's in, so many
Section
things.
6 or
It's in
something.
It's in the police stuff.
Yeah.
600.
back from the time, so it is there.
Okay.
What will happen is, as you go through this process, council will adopt a more, clear code,
Okay.
right, in perhaps a different location, that deals with this specifically. You don't always put, depending on how you implement sidewalk enforcement, and the reason it's in police, just like in other municipalities, it's also not in the zoning code. It's in a section near to the police, because it's at the end of the day, it's within the right of way.
Right.
So, police powers extend to what's on the sidewalk, right, as far as citations and things of that nature. And then maintenance of such also falls within those areas. So you have to put it a certain way, and that'll be up to legal counsel where it fits in ours, make a recommendation. But there'll be several ordinances you adopt. You'll obviously adopt a new section of code, you will adopt an ordinance to implement the program from a technical standpoint, you know, how it happens, because, you know, at the end of the day, depending on how this, if you get a contractor to do everybody, if you let people opt out, there's a lot of flavors that you guys will have to make a decision on, and then your ordinance will reflect that, and then at the end of the day, you'll send something up to the county to put it on the property tax rolls for them to pay off over a certain amount of time, or sooner, or whatever you guys decide from a term standpoint. So there are a few pieces of this one, but here's what it, residency, and this is the description of the program.
No, I'm in I think it's super important, because my daughter came home just a couple weeks ago and tripped over in Westerville. I was like, too bad I don't know which resident it was, I'd go knocking on their door right now.
I guess the question that I had was relating to, in the future, do we want to consider how to maybe incorporate sidewalks here? And I know that's an involved thing with
So the answer is gonna
surveys,
be, I think, yes.
but some sort of, incentive program to
Well,
encourage homeowners to
that's
put
definitely
sidewalks.
descriptive, because it's gonna depend on how the planning goes, right? So I think, and I've been talking to the mayor about this recently, because you guys are gonna see the school district come in for multiple projects in the near future. They're gonna start building the middle school, and they're on a fast track to get their plans approved, and they've got grant money, and their levy, of course, passed. So I've already had a staff meeting with them, they've been here to meet with the mayor and I, and there have been a lot of communications right now as they get situated and ready to present. So in the next couple of months, I'm assuming they're gonna start their process in front of P and Z.
He said as fast as 2 months.
Yeah, yeah. So they're gonna keep, which is actually good timing, quite frankly. It would have been hellacious had they been coming when the houses were still here. But fortunately, that's timed out quite well, where we're winding down here, and now we're gonna wind up for the next 5 years, and that's what they said, it's gonna be a 5-year program, where they're gonna build 2 buildings and renovate the one. So it's gonna be active, from a review standpoint and construction, which overall is good. Now, part of that discussion is, they were asking about pathways. They get points and grant money for connectivity, and obviously it affects their busing routes and systems too. So there's gonna be some discussion. I think it's reasonable to say, probably we should look at a pathway that goes from State Route 3 all the way to Cleveland along Minerva Lake Road. That's your primary arterial. That's a reasonable place to start from an efficiency standpoint. It gets a little more complex and perhaps more expensive as you move. Do you really want everyone to have sidewalks? Should they all have sidewalks? I would say, from what I see from a design standpoint, not necessarily, right? Cul-de-sacs that are off the beaten path probably don't need them. That would be, that's a fairly normal thing. You don't need it. It's really a desire thing in that case. But from a monetary efficiency, a safety, because you're looking at the safety of your pedestrians. Here you have a lot of walkers. Here you have a place where you've got a lot of walkers in the road. Surprisingly, a lot of them are at night with their dogs, right? Some people wear reflectivity, some don't, and you don't have a lot of lights, right? That's the other thing, which is nice in one sense. It's in certain situations, low lighting is good, but your traffic is heavy. So no pathways, a lot of pedestrians, no lighting, it leads to conflicts inevitably. I mean, I think the safest one, since most of your speeding tickets come on Minerva Lake Road, you can look at that stat. That's really where you want to start from a pedestrian safety and health and welfare standpoint, from a planning standpoint. And then you can discuss, as you get that project done, you can start the process discussing where else would we like them,
From
right?
Jordan Road,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah,
Exactly.
'cause you-
Over to the top,
And you can find a way to connect some of these
Next
areas.
to your backyard.
Margarita Trolley.
Yeah, you can find ways to connect some of these areas that perhaps have been least connected, like
Yeah.
Jordan Road, unfortunately.
But I was thinking,
So.
something like, a 0.5% tax credit. If this, during the year that you install sidewalks in your right of way, just for that year, it's gonna come out to a wash.
Well,
But something like that
for
might
that year.
incentivize people to
And
do
that's,
it.
that's definitely something that different ideas can be talked about when
Like-
they get to sidewalk, because again, it's gonna depend on, do we want sidewalks there, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in an area whether you want sidewalks, then yes, you should probably have some incentivized system, that, people can do that. But again, do you want the residents
That's a conversation.
contracting and doing it themselves, rather than having a unified program to get them
Yeah,
installed,
yeah,
which will
that's
be
true.
more efficient
It would-
and cheaper, and still
probably cheaper.
utilize the tax dollar at the end of the day, so.
And then what did we do when we have 2 houses right in the middle and say, no?
Yeah,
Well, that's, I mean, I
Cause
guess.
then, no, because then we're gonna go knock on their door and be like, hey, by the way, all your other neighbors are doing it, so are you.
Yeah.
yeah.
But-
So, and that's,
Honestly, I'll say just, I live on Alder Vista, and I'm thinking, well, there's no room for sidewalks in these yards, the front yards
that's
are
part of
not
the
large.
planning. Some will be reasonable and some won't, right?
What do you mean some will not be reasonable?
All, you have, depending on the measurement of right of way, in most places, whether people realize it or not, off of pavement, you've got 10 to 15 feet, right? 15 feet's the outside, some places it's only 10. So you'd have to, it's gonna require some planning, very simply, so.
Perhaps like expanding it out into the road and turning it into a one-lane street, something like that.
Yeah, no, I don't
People
think
can have
that's
different
I would be
discussions.
more favorable towards that sort of solution. Be a hell of a lot safer for everyone there too.
It might be,
I think the
But-
initial conversation needs to be whether this is something that we would like to see happen.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's
think
an
that's the
expensive
first step.
endeavor too, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not one that's in favor of sidewalks in the existing, I mean, it's the character of the village.
so that's a discussion, and again, that's a discussion that PNC as a whole can have, and you can make a recommendation with a preliminary plan of wherever you think a sidewalk should go, and send it up to council, and they can take it up or not take it up. That's your full right as the commission. So, but it's not a bad idea to do it in some strategic places, and look at how
Or
it
we
will
can
be
ask
done.
Buster to pay for it. Hey, you want it for your buses? Here you go. Hey, doesn't hurt to ask.
Is that a thing? Sorry.
No, I don't know. Well, I mean, all they can do is say no. We can have these, or who knows? You never know. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, yeah, is that something you want? Is it something that you wanna continue your pathway like that we have around the lake? Is that something we could continue up, even if it's just that way, up to the school from here? Cause that one main, bus stop is right here.
Yep.
So I mean, if we literally started it from right there and just went up that direction,
right.
that's gonna hit your house, so you can go, So, I mean, it's,
I'd rather not, but it's, you know,
you guys at
it's
least
not my
have
land,
a
so-
yard, yeah, you guys at least have a front yard. But yeah, you're right, over there, you guys
It seems to
don't.
me you might not have parking and a sidewalk on the same side.
That's-
Although it
that's-
might protect the people walking, but I think
don't
if
know.
we've got the parking, we probably shouldn't have the sidewalk.
it's-
Probably not,
it's-
so it might go on the other side.
It's reasonable to how, you know, you can look at several angles as you go through the process. The
So it could be
the
on that
pros and the
side.
cons, so.
And the other part is, once you get right here, they can, not that it's easy, but you can get over to
Yeah.
that, the new development and walk the sidewalks the back way, cause that's gonna be the middle school. As soon as you get to here, they're gonna, and same thing, Alder Vista and all of that, you're gonna cut through the new neighborhood to get to that school.
You
So
say
that's gonna be the elementary.
Oh,
Inside is
that's
gonna be
what
the
I said.
elementary, middle school is gonna be on the outside.
So, talking about paths, I would love to know when the rest of the blacktop path is going to be done. Are there plans
To do what? Which
to
one?
redo it?
This, the one that's like fall, like you trip and fall and about kill yourself?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, there are plans to redo it come springtime.
From
Really?
us or from MI or
No,
who?
MI is responsible, that's their
No,
pathway, isn't it?
No, we're talking
No, they
about
were
right
just-
outside the door, right here.
From
Oh, well, then, yeah,
here
that's you
to
guys.
where the nice.
Wait, okay,
pretty
so
one is.
seriously, what are they redoing and is it something
There's
that?
there's stuff within the public way that needs
I
some repair
know,
work.
but would they be willing to give us,
You mean the
a dis-
contractor?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, could we
Yes,
just ask them what it would cost
We
us
can
to do
ask.
that little thing?
Yes.
Right there.
that's perfectly reasonable, and if you're lucky, since they seem to be happy doing pathways and stuff at times, they might just do it for you.
I
We
mean,
can ask.
like, don't forget, okay, write that, where's your little book?
I will write it.
Write that in your little book.
When I talk to them, I'll bring it
Can
up.
they, can they fix the joint of the one by the double benches too?
We're gonna have to walk, you and I are gonna have to go walk, you're supposed to
Yeah,
show me a
no
couple of
kidding.
things.
Well, this one is the one, you know, right in front of our cars, right where we're parked. That one, that leads from this drive all the way down.
The really unsafe skinny one.
Yeah.
Okay,
We would like it to be another couple inches at least wide.
I think that it's gotta be the same, you know, that, so when I
The
was
golf
on-
cart won't fit on it. He
Oh,
drives
yeah.
it in the street,
Oh, yeah.
so it just needs to be a couple
When I
more
was
inches.
on MPCA, I was checking to see, could we actually do it as the association? And I just figured we'd redo it at the size that it was. But now that you're used to the ones that they put in, what are they, 5 or 6 feet?
they're
It
8
almost
feet
has to
wide.
be that.
Yeah.
These are 8 feet.
Yeah, the ones that, the big pathways should be 8 feet.
Cause that's, like you said, I mean, you can barely get, you can get one person, but you can't get the golf cart, you can't get
Yeah, 8-foot paths are enough for the
2
golf
people, a
cart.
stroller, a
Right.
dog.
Yeah, the wider the better in some cases.
So yeah, ask them when they're gonna do theirs, and I mean, even if it meant X amount of dollars, if it was something that we could do,
I will,
reasonable,
okay.
here you
Yeah.
go. Check.
Yeah, because it's just efficient if they're already out there fixing pathways.
Right.
They can just come and fix ours, yeah, totally
Yeah.
agree. so.
And all they can do is say no, or all they can do say it's X thousand dollars.
So what I'd like is back to the sidewalk program, if everyone can, read that, and your homework is for whatever meeting we come back to, just, whether it be the 5th or, 15th, just we'll be able to act upon it by then, so it gets in front of legislation by the end of the month, that would be what the goal is. So. Alright. Down to new business, I do have other new business. I'll show you where it is.
You didn't realize this was gonna be this easy today, did you?
No.
I have a question.
We haven't even started on anything else that you wanna
What's
talk
that?
about yet.
A question on that, can I ask what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, why don't you?
Zach Beaver, talking about a Bluebird Trail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he and I are already communicating, so
Okay.
we'll work with him to get that
So,
done.
have y'all met?
He was here to meet, I met them briefly while they were here talking to the mayor, and he and I have exchanged emails. Yeah, no, actually I have a lot of experience with bluebirds, I know the bird houses, so, a wonderful bird. I can give him some, and we had an extensive, I believe the woman who's running the whole program for the Central Ohio, she was there in Powell, and she's very avid about her boxes up there too, so I think that's the same organization.
So I think he's been discussing this with the leader of the group, so it might be that it's the same guy.
Yeah, I believe it is.
Okay, so you don't know anything from MI yet, though?
No,
About
I
what's
have to have a kind of a general meeting, I don't think it'd be a problem, but I wanna make sure.
Not Zach, Alex Beaver,
Yes,
sorry.
sorry,
Zach's his son.
I know what you're talking about.
I just told him I'd chat him tonight.
Yeah, yeah, just tell him that, I probably owe him another email, but he and I have exchanged emails, and then we'll get a meeting set up, and I'll get permission in some form. I'm assuming he might not be fine with it, but I gotta talk to him.
Yeah, he's talking about, he wants to get them in before the.
March 15th.
Yes, I
Oh, did he
understand,
say a date?
it's
March
important,
15th.
the birds start looking for housing right around that mid-March, when it's in the
awesome.
spring, yeah.
How many are
He's got a
anticipated?
plan for 8, it looked like on his
Okay.
map.
He
Are
had
we
a
going?
couple, when I talked to him, he had a couple different areas that he was
Yeah.
Yeah.
hoping to
I
do.
have the map at the end. I can give you guys like the map and like his little thing, cause he gave me a couple copies to give.
Is he gonna handle the house swallows, or is that up to the village?
He said he is doing it.
House sparrows, is that what they're
Yeah,
called?
he's got it, it takes a lot of,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of maintenance, I explained everything to the mayor about how you have to
I'm not
manage
doing
it.
that.
And just so you know, and this was my name's Bennett and I'm not in it.
Seems,
Yeah.
This
seems,
is on MI if they wanna do it, because
Yeah.
I will tell you, I do believe residents will flip.
yeah, if you get into that situation, show them a picture of what a house sparrow does to a bluebird, and then they'll
They
change their
did, yeah,
mind.
Right.
but people, it's just like the geese, people don't understand how they, you have to be aggressive, house sparrows are very
Yeah.
aggressive, non-native species, and you have every right to cull and so, yeah, when I'm, in my houses, I even had spring traps that I set on the inside, so because it's the male that takes over the house, and he determines, the female then comes and picks it, but the male will sit there and chirp away, and well, they're a noisy bird, poops all over it, and then, but the male goes in, and then the spring trap traps him in there, and then I go and I get him. So that's the end of his little butt, so that's how it works,
Yeah, I have a client that does that.
yeah,
She does a Bluebird Trail and she'll just.
Yeah.
yeah.
Snap it up.
They're wonderful birds, and it's because of programs like this that the native species are able to recover from the non-native species, because, you know, people don't realize that the sputsies, the house sparrows, they were released by some knucklehead in Central Park in the mid-1800s.
That's not their fault.
And there were eight of them, and now there's
Wow.
millions and millions and millions of them, and Home Depots, anything like that, they fly, they are sparrow facilities.
It's probably the most numerous bird around
We
here,
are not
right?
asked
That is,
to.
I would say
pay
that,
for
as well as,
anything.
starting with the other non-native species, that they just come in giant flocks of people over your car,
Nice.
so,
Just,
Right-
he
right
brought
to
all
have.
this in. Aaron, I think you have it.
I do.
Do you have a copy?
That's awesome.
I don't.
So the map that he,
So Eric, sounds like you
the
have
lady
some
told
bluebird
him not
boxes,
to
is
do
that right?
this.
I do, I used to put them out in one of my
So just
original
one day
acne in my
out.
house
So
years
they told him
ago,
not to do
and
that. I don't know.
I experimented, because they're a bit of a territorial bird,
Yeah,
if you get
for
them
some
out
reason not to go
of
back
line
in
of
there.
sight of the houses.
I'm not.
Yeah.
You can actually have two in your yard, but you gotta have a certain distance
I wonder
from
why.
line of
Maybe
sight.
it's
I don't know.
But they're good birds, the same mating pair can have.
I think
three
it had
broods
something to
a
do with
year.
being able to see
So they can
certain
reproduce
things,
out of
and they
that.
wouldn't be able
My
to
mating
back in
pair,
there.
I had them for several
It
years.
had something to do with that.
And they
Maybe
changed,
too
we
close
call them
zones.
standard murder,
Yeah.
but at some point,
So
someone,
each-
one of the birds, you can
Each
choose.
one of the
that.
dots,
Dot,
And
okay.
they died, they didn't come back one year,
Yeah.
and then we
Oh,
had,
so he's
but the
really
children
spread
come
them out
back.
compared to
Nice.
So they
what,
come looking, so.
he
I
mentioned
mean,
to
how
me.
frequently do you
Yes.
have to police the stupid house?
You have to, it's very, for this many houses,
Well,
it's
you
very
don't
time
want them too
intensive.
close, cause they're
Very
territorial.
time intensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you have a backyard one, it's easier, cause you can look out your window and see if the idiot bird the sparrow is sitting there trying to take over the box. But otherwise, they have to walk the trails almost on a daily basis, and if they get sparrow
I read
eggs
all
in there,
that.
they gotta get rid of those eggs.
Oh, maybe it's on here.
So, it's very active, so people have to be very passionate about it.
Yeah.
Representatives from the
That's
Ohio
great that
Bluebird
folks do
Society. And they're the ones supplying all of the bird boxes and all of that kind of stuff. So
That's
but she
awesome.
said not
Yeah.
to do this.
That's good.
Back in here, so she just said from there
Absolutely.
to there.
Oh, okay.
So this one would not be
And
there.
Tiffany was talking about bats, so she loves bats.
Yeah,
and some
you
bat
beat me
boxes.
to it,
I am
yeah.
out for bat boxes.
Oh, no.
You guys are, put them anywhere you want, just don't
Hey,
put them at my
man, they'll
house.
take out the mosquitoes for us. You know,
They
so-
will, and
Yeah.
there's,
We'll keep them away from your house, you're good.
If you have a certain,
Bats
bluebirds
and
are the same way, bats and purple martins, combination, you can eliminate, you don't really, if you have them spread out, that's a very natural way to handle your mosquitoes, and you can almost eliminate spraying, almost. It really depends, you can pinpoint problem areas.
well, this year, we're actually doing traps inside the village, which is double the price, only option. That way we're not unnecessarily spraying.
Right. What are traps? We
Yeah,
don't need to
what
get
does that
into this, I don't.
I have no idea, there's
Okay.
3 different ones.
Alright,
Just
for another day, yeah.
Yeah,
Franklin-
for another day. I have
Franklin County will
papers.
have all their info online about how they handle their program and how they track
Did you know
them. So you can look that one up.
I remember hearing something, but I didn't know
They were at one
something
of the
was
meetings.
decided.
Oh, no, we don't have a choice. Blended Township's no longer doing it. So our options are don't spray whatsoever, or we put in, we could have piggybacked on Blended Township. We chose not to piggyback on Blended Township because we don't wanna spray every time they spray just because, and we have a different environment. So in order to do it right, we felt that we needed to do it, if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it right. That was my view.
So what company is it that's doing?
It's through Franklin County, but it's Clark. I have everything on my desk. It's Clark. It's on the legislation.
So if
Do you
I just
remember what it was?
Googled.
No.
mosquito
Franklin County.
traps?
Well, you could Google. It's Franklin County's program. Franklin County, and people will be able to, I believe, opt in and opt out. People will be able to do that. Has nothing to do with us,
Oh,
because that was the big thing
I
that
like that.
we don't have the capability of monitoring the opt in and opt out, and because I just
They get with
learned.
Franklin County.
I just learned, did you guys know in planning and zoning, since this is where we're at, ready? Did you know we have a no knock
Registry?
registry? Did you know that?
I
Don't
did.
tell me you did. Tony,
Well,
Mr. Know-it-all.
Well, there's only a few, I think Lisa, you might be on that, or maybe not. There's only a couple, there's probably 3 people on that do not.
They give them, when they get a solicitor permit, they give them the list, and I
Maybe
thought,
not.
that's the best thing since sliced bread, I went on there.
I'd be on that.
I think.
I don't answer the door anyway.
I don't either.
If I don't know, I don't answer.
Well, but it's something, again, the new website will be able to put those types of things on there for residents, but nobody knew that we had it, but we do have one.
And it's supposed to be given to the guy that.
It is.
picks up
It is.
all-
Every
We should
time.
be telling the residents that we have one so that they can get on it.
Didn't even
right?
know that we had, but, yeah, I just learned about it today. I learn something new every day. Just come in here, it's,
Dude, yeah, just tell the residents you'll earn all kinds of brownie points for that. Look what I did.
look what, that's what I should do, take credit for it, so they're
Yeah.
gonna hear me say this. Rebecca listens
Well,
to it.
you'll be the one that says, hey, here's the program, you'll be the one that's advertising the program.
We're
so-
gonna advertise it, so,
So-
and then Leah's gonna, why'd you have to do that? Just teasing. Well, if it was, again, if it was on the website, it would be easy for her just to like, take all the information. At this
Right.
point, it's just people calling in, or
Taking up time.
maybe
Yeah.
we supply, get an email
Maybe
address or
the
something.
website would be good enough so that people just fill it out and send.
That's what I'm saying, and doing,
Get on.
that's a different topic,
Yep.
but yeah, we got all kinds of goodies for that. Okay, what are we doing?
So on this one,
Oh,
here's
yeah,
the,
I already heard all this.
Yeah.
This is for you guys.
yeah, so here's a couple things with our membership, terms of office, stuff like that. So in discussions with the mayor, here's a draft version of changing the code that we're allowed to change, per the legal counsel. There are some things that we cannot alter. For example, we cannot alter, because we're a statutory village, we cannot, unlike a charter, alter our membership. That is dictated by state code. So you cannot add, as we had discussed, we cannot add 2 more members.
That was true, but now listen.
So what we also cannot do is what is not in this village, as in other municipalities, is the right for council to regulate the members that's just not in there. People serve, and oddly enough, in the history of the village, as I perused it back from the early 90s, only time they ever made actual appointments was when there was a vacancy. Otherwise, people just continued to serve, and that seemed to have been the way it's worked. So what we also did in consultation with the mayor is we had some language to allow that to happen legitimately. So the mayor has the right to appoint someone else in the first 30 days of any 2-year term that becomes expired. So she can, so if somebody wanted to continue to serve, but the mayor said, no, your term's up, I'm gonna put someone else in there, here's my appointments to council. That's her prerogative to do so. And then council, has to consent, shall consent in this case. So, however, if this code allows for the legal continuance of a term, if nobody gets appointed. So if you wanted to continue to serve and nobody cared, nobody bothered, you would continue to work into your next term. And after January 31st, you have the right to serve out the rest of your 2-year term, except for if you resigned, or under the new code, the council has the right to remove any member. So, which is council's prerogative. However, it's the mayor that makes that advice.
Okay.
So in fact, the way it works, so that way, just like you make an appointment, you would say, okay.
Somebody's not showed up 3 meetings in a row or something like that.
Exactly. Or, something else has happened, and so you have the right to say to council, hey, I've got someone to fill this space, or, something else has happened and we need to remove this individual. I mean, things change, people change over time, we don't know. But there's a right to regulate that by the mayor and council, just as there's a right to appoint. What isn't here, this is a typo, is under F, I thought I scratched this, but the representative council is regulated by his fellow council members, but not within this code. So the language has to be in the rules of council that council adopt to regulate themselves. So that won't be in the draft that you vote on to send up to legislation, because it can't be done this way. So where it says any at-large member or the representative council, scratch the or representative council, that doesn't belong there. So council has to regulate their own members through the rules of council, not in this code here. So, another thing, since we couldn't add 2 more voting members, we are allowed, however, to add 2 additional advisory, non-voting citizens at large members, which is the mayor's desire to get some additional blood onto the, into the body, and these people can, continue to serve and advise the commission. They can be used for special purposes. Their mayor makes, just like before, makes the advice to put someone on, and council approves. So, and they also be qualified electors, so residents of the village. And that's pretty much it. That's what's in front of you.
Pros and cons. Questions?
I guess just where does everybody stand in the staggering of?
And just so you guys know kind of where this came about, do you know why
Your
we're
term's up at
talking
the end of
about?
this year, her term's up at the end of this year. He's the one his term was,
Yeah, you guys can vote me off, go ahead.
the mayor.
We're gonna vote you off the island.
Right now, I believe the mayor has said he should stay, but I'll let her
You've
take
been
it.
here like 6 months, so.
Yeah.
You continue to serve, so congratulations.
Super.
So, but your 2 terms are up at the end of this year.
Okay, so then what,
So
we
then,
can stay, or if
if
the
the mayor wants to
has
reappoint,
somebody else, she
Yeah.
would appoint them.
she can appoint them to your spot, or you can step back into the, depending, a lot of things can rotate. If you add 2 more advisory, non-voting members, people can rotate in and out of those spots. And that way there's, someone may still want to come serve, but not have the burden of maybe showing up every single meeting. Maybe you're needed for some of the year in that advisory position, right? There's a lot of flexibility in doing that, so.
I thought first off, we've kind of gone with what council has discussed. This kind of came about for several different reasons. it was, one of the thoughts was because we have the huge lake project, the school build, you know, all of the different projects that are coming about, and actually trying to get things done this year, you know, again, just website, lakes, we had our meeting the other night. Having 2 additional people making phone calls, doing whatever it is they need to do to get some of these projects moved forward was the initial thought. Well, when we found out we couldn't have 2 voting members, is this a waste of time? And that's him, I mean, I think it's great to have 2 additional members. If you decided to leave tomorrow and one of these people has been coming to meetings, which is what I wish council had, and you may disagree with this, I would love if we would've had 2 additional people sitting in the wings. You bring a brand new person in and you know, you're just, I mean, maybe you can agree to this, but the first couple meetings that you're at, you're just kinda like, huh, what did I sign up for? So it'd be nice to have somebody,
Kinda like that.
right, I am
Honestly.
too, well, I'm sitting in here today going, what did I do?
Yeah.
So I just think it would be great, or, you know, a medical illness of a family member or something like that, you would have an advisory person that, I don't have to go in the neighborhood looking for someone. So, and that has been the issue with council, so I love the idea of I'm leaving it to you guys, this is, I mean, if you guys are absolutely against it, then obviously we're not gonna take it to council. I don't honestly have no idea what Tony's thought was, I just thought the advisory, it's 2 more people to argue with, I get that too. So, I just feel like if you have 2 of the right people, you have a backup, you have additional input, you have hands that can actually help you do additional things, and that was my reasoning for, I mean, G was my hope, and if it doesn't work, you guys can all blame me.
It's essentially like having a couple more volunteer staff in the community.
What do you see as the negative?
I don't necessarily see a negative in that, because,
Anyone?
yeah, I think I think there's, in a small community like this, it's helpful, especially as Tiffany has pointed out, it's nice to have a bench in some ways, and you're calling forth on the bench. You know, and you could do that with a charter, by the way, at council, you guys could have your non-voting members, but that's a different discussion.
We can have that discussion.
Here's a question in terms of non-voting, is there, I'm just trying to be creative here, is there a way, like, if you don't have a quorum because someone's ill or something, could the non-voting kind of sub in as a voting, or no?
Not necessarily, I don't believe so, that is a very interesting question, we didn't get to that one with Gene, I'll have to ask him that. My first initial thought as we went through this whole thought process and precedent concerning statutory authority and how it's set down in code and what we can change and not change, my first thought based on that long discussion was probably not, however.
Seems overly creative, but who knows?
Yeah, because the problem is under a statutory body like this, in the village, you're very limited. You're not truly home rule in the sense of like what a charter gives you, right?
I'm in a meeting. Is it?
And so you are a creature of statute, and therefore there are some things that are not bendable, right? Is the best way to put it. So, but it's an interesting question. I'm all about creativity.
Will this conflict with state law if you're
No.
adding things?
Nope.
If you're simply adding a voting member, that's not
If you're
conflicting,
adding a
is it?
voting, it is.
Is
If
it?
you're adding a voting member, it is, because you're not a home rule body. At the end of the day, you're
I
a
don't
creature-
see that
you're a
as a
creature of statute.
conflict. I mean, I've not read the case law or anything.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem, it seems additive rather than a conflict.
We assumed we would have been able to,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was definitely shot down.
All right.
Yeah.
But again, I could care less, I mean, I guess, here's the other part, I mean, to me, for the most part, I feel like 99% of the time, even with council, when we finally get to the point of being able to vote, most of us are on the same page, you know, I mean, it may take us a few meetings to get there, but, so whether or not they're voting members or not, I love the idea of just the 2 additional input, and again, having somebody on the bench, because if you don't have anybody, it can take weeks, if not months, to get somebody back, and then you've got 2 members.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll say, I think this is great. I think it's good.
There've been times in the history that it was, in some cases, a year before they filled certain spots over the course of time, you know, 6 months, 8 months would go by, and then they'd find somebody, you know, it's weird that way, but.
And I think with the new development, you know, I know we've been saying this with council, and we've been saying it with everything, I would love to see somebody over there get involved, and I know they're just now like unpacking their boxes, but I would love to see one of those people be from over there, you know, that has some insight of things that we aren't thinking about that's important to them. We'll get there. Again, I think they're still unpacking their boxes.
You know, the first part of this is educating the public that we have a planning
Exactly.
commission and what they do.
And a mayor and a council? Sorry,
And that you're not
was that
Columbus.
outlined? Okay. Hey, we're gonna work on the Rita first. So, I mean, yeah, that was our thoughts to it.
Yeah. So essentially, again, homework, just read, and then you guys can act on it at the next meeting before the legislative committee. That's my goal for you guys.
All right, new business. This is all you.
Okay, was there something on animals I was reading in a lot of?
Yes,
I'm
yes.
curious about this.
So,
I know what it is. I can read between the lines. Leash laws, things like that, I'm
Well,
assuming? All of the
yes,
above?
but it's more, I guess, what Indy has is far more expansive than just leash laws. But
Right.
we've, a lot of what's written in our ordinances isn't exactly clear. I know, right? But
Crazy.
specifically with this, I see it on Facebook all the time, people commenting all the time, just out walking, you know. What does it mean to have your animal under your control? There's a whole lot of leeway there, but just, it's like that for the whole concept of animals in general, and within other non-related, other non-animal related code, there are a lot of gaps. But I picked animals to talk about because there are organizations that, where there are experts in the field. What should be code? What is sound? Not just from an animal lover standpoint, but I think Indy has done a really good job of being thorough and agreeable to everybody. And what they have is very simple. It's easy to understand, but it's precise. So, leash laws, what are the leash laws? You just look there and you know exactly what you can and can't do. The leash has to be, it can't be any more than X feet, it has to be made out of these materials, so it takes away a lot of the guesswork. But, and in terms of what is a suitable housing unit for an outdoor animal, it's very specific and it leaves no room for question. It can be made out of these materials, you have to provide this type of water, you have to do these things. It's easy to understand. There's no way that anybody could read that and have a question about, is what I'm doing okay or not? The same with the treatment of animals, how do we handle birds within the village, just kind of anything related to any kind of animal, livestock, whether or not it's acceptable. So they've done a heck of a job. Somebody spent a lot of time consulting people. They've gone through their own planning and zoning, they've gone through their own council, they've gone through their own legal team, and they've done all of the work.
Is
So,
this from Indianapolis or?
yes, yeah.
I mean, the only thing I would say about that is that it's in another state.
Yes.
And that their laws may be different.
So,
So to use code from another state, I think it could be problematic in how you can apply it in Ohio.
You definitely don't copy it word for word. I mean, that's
Yeah.
for a legal review, right?
yeah,
To see what
yeah,
applies,
so,
what doesn't apply.
but in terms of a baseline document, you can look at it section by section and say, does this make sense, does it not?
And can we do it? Yes, that's where you get, if you like it, you move forward, if you don't.
And I'm sorry, I'm not disagreeing at all, I'm just curious, what was the genesis of choosing the Indianapolis code versus whatever other municipality, and where did that come from?
So I
So it
did,
came up on Google?
well, I
That's
was
what I
doing-
would've said.
I was doing research on, I was reading some articles on what is best practice. And it wasn't just for animals, it was, whatever, I sent out 3 or 4 emails in December with various code-related items that we've been wanting to discuss at some point. Trying to identify what was best practice in according to who. And when it came to animals, a lot of animal organizations said, it's difficult, we don't like these, they're not inclusive enough, or it leaves too much to be desired. But it seemed like people who advocated for animals really liked this, not just because it was very detailed, but because it was fair. And it was really thoughtful. And so I thought if we kind of took that approach with the zoning related items in general, like start with something that is up here and figure out, you know, not necessarily, well, what's here versus what we have. You know, we don't even, I mean, a lot of times I think what we have is kind of secondary, like, okay, just forget we have anything at all. This is the, you know, this is best practice. What maybe doesn't apply to us, and we'll scratch it. What does apply to us, what don't we like, what do we need to change? You know, I think it might help us move things along faster. You know, like we've been, I mean, sidewalks, just in general, we've been talking about this for 4 months. And we haven't gotten to a point, and we haven't changed anything in what we're really looking at. But we haven't done anything about it either. And I think we're spending an awful lot of time, but we're not making any progress. And
Well,
I
that's
could,
gonna start,
and I
yeah.
could see that being frustrating, because even when we do decide what we wanna do about sidewalks, we're gonna send it to council, who could say, well, I don't like this. And we're gonna, you know what I mean? And that's
Hey,
fine.
that's the direction I'll be heading.
Yes, and I know
That's the name-
specifically with sidewalks, Tony said he doesn't like what we,
Well,
what
that's,
we're
that's, yeah,
proposing.
but that's
But-
the single
I'm
vote,
just
so,
one person.
yeah.
Yes, he's just
You
one
make your
person.
recommendation and
But,
that's how it goes.
you know, we've spent a lot of time focusing on something that ultimately we don't have the end of, you know, we're not like the authority in the matter.
No,
And-
you're not, nor,
So,
unless you get to
yeah.
council, you won't be. I mean, that's just, that's the, as we know, that's the
Yes.
nature of the beast here. So,
And
you make
I'm-
your recommendations, some are like, some are not, some are go through and some don't.
And, you know, I'm just looking at this thinking, this is tedious.
Mhm.
To spend 4 months looking at the same piece of paper and.
That is certainly not the same piece of paper.
I mean,
Well,
there's not a whole lot that's changed from what
It's a
it was,
significant
we've always
draft.
been looking at Westerville for the last.
You
4
have,
months.
however, I will say the amount of time that you have spent on it is much less than the time I've spent reading on it to get it funneled down to you,
Yes,
okay?
yes, and
Here's
So-
what I say on this, I feel like we could literally have this knocked out in,
Yes, you
within
can-
an hour.
you certainly can do that
I
now.
feel like we really can.
Yeah, you certainly can do that now, absolutely.
We have it knocked out in 10 minutes, how about that?
Yeah,
Oh, I can tell you, I mean, I only have one minor thing, and I think Tony might agree
Hmm.
with this, but, I mean, and I don't wanna go back to this
yeah, we want
yet.
people to have a chance to read and vote.
But I
properly,
would say,
so.
I'm not in disagreement with you, because I would say the worst thing for council has been talking about the lakes for 2 years like this. I would rather jump out this window, open it up, jump out, and I'm over it. And I've gotten to the point that if you guys wanna start talking about lakes, I'm out. When you guys wanna do something about the lakes, call me. So, I mean, seriously, that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm not going to sit in a meeting anymore talking about it. So, I feel, yeah, and it's the same thing, I think, with the animals, I think we can get really to me, that's kinda like the charter. You take every single section, we cross off what we want, and I mean, to me, I feel like we could seriously knock out a majority of it if we really sit down and do it in an hour. Like, I know that sounds crazy, and
No, no,
I mean, to me,
Have you seen it?
It's,
No, but
it's
I'm-
quite extensive, this is more than an
oh,
hour.
no, I could do it
No
in,
idea.
Wow.
well, there's probably certain
Oh,
sections we
how much
wouldn't
would be
even
involved?
I
want
mean,
to do.
we'd have to come back to the table with something that's pretty well prepared, cause I mean, it's gonna take a lot of review, homework.
Yeah.
Which,
But are we gonna do
This
all
is-
of the
that's what-
sections? I guess that
that's
would be
what's
my first
necessary.
question.
yeah.
Would
That's
we
how we
actually
get to that
visit all of it?
document.
Well,
Yeah.
that's an excellent question, is
You don't
what are our
decide.
priorities, what do we actually want to get at, because there's like you said, it's comprehensive, do we want all of that? I don't know.
How about the charter?
No,
No, the,
No, because,
in
I mean,
Indiana pet
so
code, yeah,
here,
or
like,
animal
here would
code.
be my first question,
Did you see it?
without going
Oh,
through it.
I didn't read it all. but I-
So,
There's a
and
lot,
I'm gonna be
yeah.
honest, I didn't go through all of it, but here would be my first question, just from something that you said. Do we wanna make a rule as to what people have to have their dog in X amount of degree weather? Are we really gonna monitor that? Is it an issue, are we doing this for future? So like, does it have to be a certain, I mean, is that something we even want to discuss? Are we, you know, I know that we did with the chicken coops, you know, if people are gonna have it, but, you know, is that something that we want to make sure that, are we really going to control outside, I'm not saying we're not, outside,
We have a lot
Houses.
in our code
So
right
the-
now about dogs. I mean, it
Yeah.
is a long.
A lot of it's, yeah, and he's right, a lot of it is state required, so it's brought in.
right?
And it's in the police code, because typically they deal with safety of dogs. It's in the police code to be enforced, right? It's not necessarily a zoning item to be enforced. For purposes of when a dog assaults somebody or another dog, or there's property damage or human damage, right? That's the reason it's in it, it's a safety issue. What you may be talking about may be more pertaining to zoning in regards to the type of structure on site. Now, there's language in all the city's codes, and they all get it from an original spot as they copied it around again, and deals, a lot of it's state code related, because it deals with cruelty to animals. So some of it's based on that, you know, you can't keep a dog out in freezing weather. You're gonna have a Franklin County Humane Society, officer on site to take that dog away. That's
So
just,
we don't need to let it.
some
do that.
stuff you may not need to, and that's
Yeah.
just a point that, you know, you can put it in your code, but at the same time, if it gets to a certain extreme, a dog is not cared for properly, be kept outdoors all the time, they will send someone who has authority. I certainly don't have authority to go on the private property, to enforce it. Even one of our police officers does not, but the Franklin County Animal Control Officer does.
And if we called Franklin County Animal Control for my next door neighbor, which I would never need to do for my next door neighbor, let's just say that. Franklin County would come in and they would handle it
Yep.
inside the village, we wouldn't
Yep.
have any problems with that.
Yeah, some of those officers have a arrest authority, and they're armed as well, so they have the ability to enforce those sections of the code.
So maybe what we need to do is go through it and say, okay, these are things that I feel like Franklin County addresses, or this is something that I feel like we need to address, because, I mean, I do think that there's,
Well, I think
Facebook says that we have an issue.
the big thing for me is the thing that came up this past summer was, what are they called, a leash, electronic leash, or?
Yeah, there was a couple leash
You know,
issues.
where the dog is not on a leash, but it's getting, I don't know how it even works.
Getting shocked or something? I've never even heard of that.
I believe so.
Our code doesn't deal, like many codes, won't deal with more modern technological advances. It deals with a traditional lease, you know,
Yeah,
leash that you put on
and
it.
I think that's the big issue
could.
here,
It could.
is
You could
whether
do
we
that.
consider, because I don't know, I don't see how an electronic leash can stop a dog that's hell-bent on attacking somebody, or, you
Well, it's
know.
like an electrical fence,
Well, but.
maybe,
But
depends on
maybe
the
not.
But if it doesn't care about the shock or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's-
it just like, it's
It
the
can
same,
get away.
it's the same argument, you know, it's just like, if I've got a big dog, let's just use a big dog, cause I've got a little dog right now, but I used to have big dogs. They're gonna yank you hard if they want that squirrel, they wanna get a hold of something, right? And
Or the other dog.
yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly, and what happens is, in those cases, they may suddenly yank you, and it's the same thing, if an electronic, a leash isn't foolproof, right? So it can be yanked out of my hand, or in some cases, a smaller person's gonna get drugged along with a big dog. I've seen that happen too in parks and stuff, you know? So where it's just a matter of physics, I've got a 150-pound bull mastiff, and he's dragging along that poor little 100-pound girl that's trying to hold him still, you know, he's not stopping. So it's just those situations, and it all goes back still to owner responsibility, right? It doesn't matter what perhaps piece of technology you use, the old or the new, either one is defeatable, right? So it all goes back to training, controls, what the device is, but you're right, our code deals with the simplest method, because it's inherited from the state, like many parts of the code.
And it goes to exactly what Tony said, what do we want to enforce and what do we not want to enforce when it comes to that? I mean, I was walking right through there, coming in when you called me to tell me that that was put on
The
there.
tunnel?
Yes, so I was walking back up the path, this guy has 2 huge pit bulls, like huge, I'm not afraid of dogs. But I can only imagine if it was like a small child that was walking behind me or whatever, seeing these big huge these 2 dogs. They seem nice, they seem whatever, but it's like, again,
They were off leash?
no, they were on their leash, but they're pulling the guy halfway across
Yeah.
I mean, he was trying to hold 2 of them back, and it's
Yeah.
myself and
And it
the
goes-
golf cart coming.
Yeah.
It goes back to training, goes back to
Yes.
training of people and the dog.
Well, I mean, the leash isn't foolproof, like
Nope.
you said,
No.
but I think an
It's still better
electronic
than-
leash is less,
I agree.
less
Possibly, yeah, very
likely.
But
possibly.
is it,
We
do
don't-
you
we-
know about
I don't know enough
electronic
either.
leash?
So, I know the electronic leash is far more dangerous for the dog.
Yeah.
There's more of a chance of that dog becoming aggressive from being
Zappage.
shocked, from,
But is
Yeah.
that similar to having, again, I would not do this to my dog, but is that similar to having the electric fence?
I think it is.
It is, so for example, I have a little mini schnauzer, he's 20 pounds. Those particular breeds are very easy to train, right? They're very food motivated, so you can train them on most things fairly easily. They're a good German little dog. But I didn't put down an invisible fence, I went to Cabela's and I got a wireless system, all right? Because, houses like here, and then so they're a certain distance apart, so it's mostly to get him back and forth front yard, and he wears a collar, and he was pretty well trained, right? So even now, he doesn't know this, but, you know, at first, you know, he had to get zapped a couple times, he had to get trained, he knows where his boundary is, and so now, even if he doesn't have that collar on, he'll stop at a certain boundary point in his yard.
Because
He knows, right? Now, I have seen him, he's smart enough to know, although he'll test it, right, like any dog, and there are some things that thing is not gonna stop him for, you know, now he knows if he's wearing it or not wearing it, right? So if he's not wearing it, he may go visit another dog. If he sees a dog, he's like, I gotta go see you, you know, and that's just it. If he's wearing it, he's gonna think twice and he stops, right? So dogs have their own personalities, they will go through it if they really want something, and even in my case, my dog's really well trained, but if he has the opportunity, he's gonna go visit something. So, they just will. So, yeah, but I agree with you, you don't wanna shock them nonstop, because that's the only thing, you
The
know.
only thing you can do is just keep.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if it gets away from a distance, you know, if it's a
I don't know
distance
how they
issue,
work.
like what I use with my dog, or like if once he's 5 feet, he gets zapped, so then the dog, it's a weird thing for the dog brain, I would think, you know,
Yeah.
because they can definitely perceive a boundary, and they can be trained to a boundary. But if you're mobile with an
Yeah, that
electronic
boundary
leash,
is
moving.
there's no
Yeah.
boundaries. I don't know how the dog knows if it's 6 feet or
Right.
under 6 feet, they don't have a visual, they
Yeah.
learn their yard, and
Yeah.
they've got some.
Visual.
Yeah, visual aid to where their
Yeah.
flags or whatever you use at first to train them. But that, I would have some difficulty just being a dog owner myself, how would the dog know, right? Certain dogs, I bet that perhaps train very well, but there's certain breeds I bet that don't, and.
Oh, my dog would never. My dog's
Who are we
too
the
dumb.
police, we're no experts, you know, we don't know these things.
If it's not set to a certain radius, I mean, you've got user inattention too, I mean, what would
Exactly.
prevent you from just, whatever, you know?
Looking down at your phone.
You know, oh shit, where's the dog, like, you know, I mean, like,
I mean, this has been an issue in the past with residents, where they're out walking their dogs, one guy's got an electronic leash, and it's not.
Well, those aren't legal by code right now. Electronic leashes aren't legal by code.
Oh, really?
It's a physical leash, so,
Yeah,
Okay.
it
Has it in
describes
here.
like a length and
yeah.
chain or something, I mean, we have a long.
Yeah, and this
as
goes-
bad as our code is, they went to a lot of trouble in our dog code.
Well, again, but that goes back, that's being pulled down from the state.
Franklin. or
Yeah, from the state
of
itself. So there's revised code references to all of these. So we just pull in what has been required of us. So, I mean, specifically what it says in our code, it says, keep the dog physically confined or restrained upon the premises of the owner, keep or harbor by leash, tether, that's the enclosure. And it says, except when that's dangerous dog, dangerous dog is funky law, but it's not really enforceable to
I
some
have a
degree.
chihuahua, she's dangerous.
Yeah, but
She's mean.
let's skip that part, but where we have the dog unlawfully engaged in hunting or training for purpose of hunting, it's accompanied by the owner, handler, no owner, keeper, or harborer of a dog shall fail to do the following. You shall secure the dog, and when the dog is off the premises of the owner, keep that dog on a chain link leash or tether that is not more than 6 feet in length, and additionally do at least one of the following. Keep the dog in a lock pen, okay, where they're going into some detail, but the 6 feet of length for the tether is
So that
the
means
key.
no electronic,
It's a
yeah.
it is a physical device, so you have to have it attached to you and to the dog as a tether. It's very well defined, so,
So then,
They can't have electronic
do
leashes.
the police take care of that? or
yes,
code
this one,
enforcement?
no, we do not enforce this part of the code. So this is a citable offense by our police department, they can give someone a ticket for this. You know, again, they can even, if the dog gets, so, this is where it gets funny. If the dog gets loose from yard to yard, that's also in the zoning where you have to control your animal. It's also in here for purposes, because dogs are property, so if the dog gets loose, causes damage to someone else's property or person, and you let it go, you can get cited for that, obviously, you get hauled into court for that too, so it runs a twofer there. Right, if I've got a non-violent dog that's just going on pooping in the neighbor's yard, that's gonna be a zoning issue. I'm gonna have to, at the end of the day though, the police still actually have to cite for that. And officers don't like to cite for cats and dog issues unless there's damage in some form,
Right.
right? Just stupid things, it's more of a neighborly thing, so I've been through that many times, it's painful. But in the case where they're walking a leash on public grounds, right, so in pathways, and remember, MI's not conveyed that stuff to us yet, so we've gotta keep in mind where the public areas are that the police can right now enforce. So, right of way is, our existing parkland is, and obviously anywhere around the lakes is. And so if the dog is on electronic leash, the officer can give a citation for not following this part of the code.
Are you saying on the MI property they can't?
That is an MI issue right now. We
Okay.
don't,
Well, they've conveyed the.
we
most of the
cannot,
rights
it
that they're
is
controlling
private, it's private property, and we can't, I don't believe, I'm gonna say this, I don't believe that you can, cause some of these are misdemeanors, right? And off the top of my head, I don't know which one's a what here, right? They're not, unless the dog attacks somebody or the dog, property, that's a different issue. That gets into some criminal code items and property damage, right? But if we're just talking about like a speeding ticket, if we're talking about a leash, not a proper leash, keeping the dog on a leash, I'm almost positive that's a misdemeanor type citation, and I'm almost positive our police can't issue that on the private property, right?
So if
Up
there's
in
a
mind.
speeder on the MI property, they can't.
Not if someone, so if we've got, when we say speeder, if we've got somebody off-road in a vehicle tearing up ground and causing a public panic, that's a whole different ballgame of citation, right? That's not the same thing. If you've got someone, running, maybe you got Flash running along, the answer is no, right? Because he can go 30 miles an hour. There's no speed limit. It's not the same thing. You have to be doing something heinous to some degree to get in trouble on private
I
property.
think where I'm getting mixed up is, where can the police are patrolling over there.
They're
They
not,
can
they're in the
do-
street. They
Okay, so
can't.
the streets are
The sidewalk, right?
ours.
Public sidewalks.
Okay.
But when we get into the non-conveyed pieces of ground, which include a lot of that open pathway by the lakes, that's not public property. Now, where surprisingly, if someone's in the tunnel underneath, that is public property, because that whole thing was conveyed, but once you get beyond the right of way, no longer, right?
Yeah.
So,
Think twice before you tag the tunnel there.
yeah, that absolutely is,
Yeah.
that's our property right there. We own the street and underneath down to where the tunnel is, that's ours. It's
So
been
if something
conveyed.
happened to one of the houses, criminal activity, they could do something.
Absolutely.
Misdemeanor, they couldn't.
Not that they could, again, it depends what they did. There's criminal mischief, there's all kinds of little pieces of the code where, if I go into someone's yard, I take a shovel and I start digging a hole, that's trespassing, and that's some type of mischief, right? I'm gonna get a misdemeanor of some type, that's not necessarily a felony, right, from the get-go. There are stages to how often, if I keep coming back day after day, they're gonna get sick of me and I'm gonna get arrested and jacked up to, once they warn me, I'm gonna get something more severe. So it all depends on what you're doing.
Sorry, I don't wanna dwell on this,
No,
but
go ahead.
the village may not own some of the property, but is it not annexed to the village? I mean, it's still our
It is-
jurisdictional territory,
It
right?
is jurisdiction,
Yeah.
right? So our zoning, the text, all that stuff applies, taxes, for example, all that applies. But when we get into police code, and by all means, talk to the chief, he'll be able to educate you much better than I can. When it gets into police code and what they can write for, where they can write for it, it absolutely depends on whether it's public or private and what's going on. There are,
And the green space is not, it's private property.
yes,
right
at this
now.
time.
Okay.
So that's
It's Mike's property.
correct. Not in 6 months, we're gonna be having a different discussion. So your discussion is perfectly valid at some point, right? It's going to extend to all these areas. It will all be public property at this moment in time. So June, July is gonna be a little funny because we're gonna be seriously talking about conveyance at that time. When conveyance happen will be probably between there and September. So at some point between June and September, all that property will come into the village. So, it'll just be around there. But right now, if someone goes out, electronic leash, and they're, running private property, it's a different issue. I don't think our police can cite for it, but chief will be able to answer that. If the dog attacks someone, it's a different story, unfortunately.
So put that on Facebook. You can do it here, but you can't do it here.
Not yet.
That'll make sense.
Yeah.
So do we want to tackle animal code, and if so, how to proceed, yeah?
I'm not. I mean, my thing is the dog, it's the leash law and just I don't know. I don't think we already have a leash law. I think the thing we need to do is let that guy know that electronic leash is not,
Not legal.
it's not, yeah.
Not within our,
It
not
is.
within our municipal bounds.
There. It's
Well,
on here.
It's not, yeah, so MI can set its own rules and say, you can't do that on our property, right? They'd have to tell him, and then he can get cited for, it's weird, he would get maybe cited for a trespass.
Does he live over there, or does anybody know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
but see, he has to cross in order to get there, he's
That's
gotta
what
be
I
on
was
the
gonna say.
public property on some point, right?
Yeah.
He's
That's what I
gotta
was
walk,
wondering.
he's gotta cross, he's gotta walk on public
Yeah.
right of way, at that point, the officers can cite him and warn him, hey, don't do that, tomorrow if I see you with your dog, here, I'm gonna write you a ticket. Next time we see you in a public property, essentially. So that can be done,
Okay.
because he can't magically get to it without being in right of way.
I was gonna say, right away count for legal purposes as,
They can
that's
cite
important,
it.
okay.
Absolutely. Yep, all the
Okay.
streets and sidewalks are all been.
What about do we
accepted.
have a right of way on the trail system through Or is that a
No,
different?
no, so that's, most of that's private
Okay.
ground at the moment.
Okay,
Right,
gotcha.
so most of those pathways, except again, the culvert, the bridge area underneath, where
Okay.
we've accepted a roadway above it, right? So that, all of that land is right away.
Okay,
But in time, like I said, in another 6 months, we'll be having a very different discussion as it gets conveyed in. But Tony's right, it is not legal to have the electronic leash and utilize it on public property here in the village. You have to control your animal with what's on the books. So,
yeah, and Donna and others, I mean, the question to me is, you know, I'm happy to help out and work and cut through code and, you know, think through things, but the direction I would want is that what council and mayor want us to do? Because I don't think we wanna spend our time on this and it's not an item of interest, you know, I mean, like,
Here's what I can say, I mean, I think Tony and I can ask council if it's something that they want us to tackle, because I don't disagree, I mean, if it's,
I guess the only thing that I wouldn't say recommend or be in support of is, what types of animals you're allowed to have in the village. I don't think there's any,
that's an interesting question.
there's state law, of course, now, after that
you
crazy.
know, you could
The
have.
exotics are
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Tigers and lions, you know.
So this is a
Hey,
very,
I wait, never mind.
very interesting thing, actually. So, yeah, it's a valid discussion.
I think that's the one spot where our code is deficient.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. So, okay, so I'll give you some examples of past experience that are a little crazy, but legitimate complaints, right? And are treated in a weird way in municipalities. So, some municipalities have exotic animals on the books, right? As to what they define as exotics, non-exotics, right? Okay. So, you could have, and I had a kid who had a ball python. Okay, now, ball pythons don't get bigger than 5 feet. They're very gentle snakes, all right? And it got loose and got in the backyard somehow, got out of the house, and a woman in next door saw it, and there was a huge rigmarole where I was working, and I had to come out, and I think they recovered it, and then she reported him having an exotic animal, and we had to have, at the end of the day, we didn't do it, it's really silly, because it's not a venomous or dangerous snake, right? But it is, under the code, an exotic animal, and you weren't supposed to have it, because the code's intent was not for that kid's snake, right? That snake wouldn't survive in the wintertime, it was not gonna go anywhere, all right? It's like me, but I could have certain species of turtles, and they're exotic animals, right? So, ferrets, in some situation, exotic animal, people have ferrets, so you do have to be careful with this edge of the code. But exotics are meant more for, and much like the state has defined it, I think, hey, you can't have a bear cub, you can't have a tiger dummy, you can't,
Right.
that's just stupid, right?
Alligator,
Well,
yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, now caimans, that's a very interesting thing, people
Oh, yeah, can.
people keep those in there.
Yeah.
So you have to get, with snakes, as an example, because I used to have snakes. Snakes, a long time ago, snakes there's different levels of them, right? So there's ones that are like that ball python, or some of your native species, that are for the most part gentle and easy to handle snakes and aren't gonna cause problems. When we get into venomous snakes, like some idiots keep cobras, I don't understand it, but some people love that stuff. And we talk about reticulated pythons where they can get to be huge creatures and they can kill you, right? When you get to animals that can kill you or cause personal injury from an exotic, that's a problem in my opinion from the safety of the residents, right? And you may want to define it in a certain way where you have tiers of critters. Like my daughter wanted a little bitty tarantula, right? Which we got her and it died. So, but the fact is, that's an exotic creature. If you get the wrong tarantula, it can seriously damage your hand, right? So people have to research. You can't just buy a tarantula and not know what you're getting. Some of them can spit things at you. Some of them can shoot little quills at you and get in your eyes and cause itchies. All kinds of species. We bought her a gentle one, and it didn't make it. So that was the end of that experiment. They're difficult to raise. But the fact is, someone's got a tarantula, and it can be an exotic critter, right? It's big enough to cause some damage. So I think you should ponder this as to how you want to move forward and what would be a exotic and non-exotic and allowed within here, and then we'll have to look at state code, right? Because state code's going to
I
prevail.
think about this, because I see, people in Powell area that got llamas.
Yes,
They're on big.
But those are agricultural critters. They're allowed to have those on agricultural land. So, right? So llamas are considered an agricultural beast, and therefore husbandry applies. And you can regulate it by your zoning, right? So you can't have a llama on a residential ground because it's defined as an agricultural animal, right? Much like chickens were prior, right? Before we made an exemption within the code to make them a pet, okay? You'd have to make a llama a pet. If you wanna do that, I don't know
There's
that you
that
do.
and pig, the pot-bellied pig craze.
And honestly, and that was another issue, we had to cite someone for a giant pot-bellied pig that got to be huge.
Yeah.
She had to get rid of it because it was considered an exotic animal, and there was no exemption for it.
Okay, just so you
So,
know,
that's the whole thing.
we shouldn't have, I mean, seriously. You really shouldn't have to think about all these crazy things that people are willing to do. Just saying.
Well, I mean, where do you even start or end? That's
Exactly.
what I don't get, like, you go
Can
through
we-
every animal
yeah.
and say, this one's okay,
Yeah.
this one's
So,
not.
so a pig, so the
I
pot-bellied
don't know how you
pig,
do that.
Just
Again,
don't bring an elephant home.
they're
That's all
defined
you're
as an
saying, or
agricultural
giraffe.
animal, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. The pig's not a pet as defined, right? It's just not.
But
in the
they
residential
became
zone.
pets.
But they're not.
Have you ever
a pet.
seen
They're
Charlotte's
not-
Web?
Someone made them a pet, but you have to, if you wanna make a pig a pet, you've gotta put it in your code like a chicken. Same way. So that's what you're gonna get into with any of these that you wanna carve out an exemption for. And right now, thanks to our code, chicken code, which I just proposed chickens, but once it got to council, rabbits and ducks are now also part of that code. So you can raise rabbits and ducks under the same code.
I have rabbits underneath my thing and groundhogs and all of them,
Yes.
and my daughter considers them pets. She has them named.
Yes. that's
Just
right.
saying. They just don't come in my house.
As long as you're not doing that, you're not caring for them technically, so.
What, don't do?
Well, that's the thing, so if you are creating a nuisance situation for wild animals for your neighbors, you could be in trouble for that, just be aware. So if you're suddenly
We don't have
caring
to
for
feed
some
them.
wild animals and making a nuisance, and they start destroying property around you, which they will,
They do.
they do, so you
They're
have to be
under my
careful.
garage and under my porch.
Yep,
Nice of you to let them stay.
I got squirrels in the attic.
Yeah.
it's the worst.
Keep you up at
How
night?
do we move
Yeah,
forward?
they're pretty,
What do you wanna do?
it's during my afternoon nap.
My feeling is, looking at this, I feel like the concern is for the animal.
No,
The ones that are domesticated, right?
So I chose this as an example just because of how thorough it is. But I think my goal is just maybe in general to be able to move things forward a little faster.
So in general, all things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, if we have something to look at a week before the meeting, and we've already reviewed it, we know what we have an issue with, we come to the meeting and, section A, everyone okay? Yeah. B, any questions? Nope, okay, we're good. And we can shoot through it, and then the next, if everything is fine, we send it off. If it's not, then.
That's the goal, that's why you have those in front of you, so next meeting you can
Yes.
vote them in.
Well, yes, but I feel like it's kind of like with the sidewalk, I don't know that we've changed a whole lot in the last 3 or 4 meetings. And it seems like things are, I don't wanna hold council up from being able to do their thing because we're squabbling over a few words that ultimately aren't gonna matter.
But that's up to the commission as a whole as to what you vote on at the end of the day and what your directive is, right?
Yeah.
So the process takes I would just say the process takes what the process takes, okay? If you wanna speed it up, we can try to do that, but anytime that you're going through a body and you have a number of things on your plate, all right, with anything, you're going to, some things are presented to you, and again, it depends on what the commission puts into it, because from staff standpoint, I don't care what you do, right? My job is to assist you to get to where you go to make recommendations, you take or leave those recommendations. I will do the legwork as in the draft, you will mark it up, you will tell me but people have to read it, and people have to come back, as you said, with comments. So the next week, if there are any comments to either of the drafts,
Yeah.
we can make the changes at that moment. There's two options for you. I can take it back and bring it back to the voting session if there's too many controversies and it's a complete rewrite, or we simply scratch, agree to language changes at that moment, and you vote, and then you're done, right? And it goes up the chain. That's how
I
it
don't
works.
think this is real, it has been over a long period of time, but I don't think we've spent a lot of.
You haven't.
Yeah, not a lot of time.
No.
Yeah, not a lot, but
You
it's
haven't.
just
But
over.
longer than maybe we should.
Yeah,
Need
so
it,
it just depends on
I can tell you
when
the
things
only
are
thing I
funny,
don't
when they're
like from
not.
this.
What?
Or the only thing that I can say about the sidewalks, the way I wanna see it done. And the only thing I would say is, village staff is gonna do it, I say that we pick a certain time, like a March, a March and an October or something like that, I'm just throwing that out there. And then we would either, send Calvin, to go do it, or, you know, however we decide that we're going to do it,
You can have your.
Are you saying fix or mark?
to mark.
Okay.
And the way that this is where I already heard you guys go back and forth, but this is just I'm gonna talk for a resident for a minute. The way that I wanna see it done is when it's marked, homeowners are responsible to have it done. If they don't have it done right the first time, we're gonna go back right out and mark it again, and they're gonna have to have it redone. So it's beneficial for them to have it done. We could potentially have a list of A, B, and C contractors to go do it. I understand that if we do it, we're gonna send them a bill, it's gonna go da-da-da-da-da. That to me is a hassle. We're never gonna do it as Minerva Park. I'm just saying 3 years from now, whatever. I don't see that ever being the case.
But will we go out and check their work?
Yes,
Yes,
you have to have an
That would be
inspection.
easier than doing it ourselves.
I agree. So,
No,
I mean,
I'm asking.
No,
'Cause I
I-
think I'm on the other side.
see, I don't disagree, but my view on okay, so what? Am I gonna call and schedule to have it done, and then I'm gonna have to follow up with the contractor? Because again, now you're asking, the big thing that I've been making sure everybody understands is Eric is part-time, Calvin is part-time. If we're gonna add additional things to these particular people's plates, you also have to realize council's gonna have to increase hours at some point. There is a lot of land over there, so whether or not this is something that our maintenance team does, our code enforcement officer does, somebody's gonna have to set up the program.
Correct.
Somebody's gonna have to continually call every so often to have it done. What do you do when, you start getting complaints, when it's not March or October? Now you've got Calvin calling in June and July and, handling sidewalks 24 hours a day. So it's the owner, you put an X at any, maybe we just do it as anytime there's an X, you've got 30 days to fix it and it's your responsibility. Calvin doesn't have the time to be Mr. Sidewalk Manager.
Yep. So Kelvin's
agree?
side,
And I'm just
Yeah.
saying Calvin, I mean,
from a staff standpoint, so here's how, I'm just gonna use other municipalities, because this has been tried and true in multiple municipalities, right? Westerville, Powell, New Albany, they all have some flavor of a program, depending on their staff, right? And it can be anyone to go out and inspect, but the efficiency is that most of the time what happens, most of them have an opt-out, meaning if a resident, they're gonna require it gets fixed like this, right? One way or the other. They're gonna go through a section of the subdivision and say, for whatever year, they have a plan, much like your street plan, right? You've got a sidewalk plan as to what you're walking on any given year, okay? If you've got a real problematic one, you handle that one on a case by case, right? If somebody cracks a block in half and it's a big danger, you go handle that one right away. It's a
Right.
safety issue. But the standard program items, you go through, you mark it. Some have an opt-out, some don't. The reason they don't is because the contractor comes through and bang bang is done within a certain period of time. If you make everyone do it and don't have the efficiency of the contractor, it's actually a more time-consuming process to inspect than if you have the contractor do it and you go through and you can just walk right behind the contractor and inspect the work same day type thing. If I've got, let's just say 10 different residents, they're not all gonna have it done at the same time, and they're all gonna do it on different days, and they're all gonna be calling their inspections in separately. It is an inefficient process for
I
staff to
don't
manage
disagree with that, but then when they don't pay their bill,
Yep.
now you're filing liens and doing this and this and this, and I'm just saying, you're back to non-efficiency.
So
And I'm
it's
just
not-
gonna tell you, people don't pay those bills
So
as.
What happens, and we haven't seen this at council yet, because the
Is that
example.
the auditor?
And,
Is it-
yeah, so what happens is that in Westerville's case, and you're seeing the program overview here from an approval standpoint. Where the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts are in the ordinances that council approves. So what
Right.
ends up happening in Westerville's case, because I reviewed all those and have those for examples for council, is they approve the first ordinance approves the program as a whole.
Right,
Each year they do it, staff brings them a report and says, here's our sections that we have inspected, here's everyone that's marked and needs to be done, here's what the cost is for each section, because the contractor's already been selected and gone out and
right.
given them a price.
But that's probably
per
gonna change
block.
every single year.
Yeah, it will, absolutely. And then what happens is council approves that to be done, and in the process of that, it's done in a big batch, and it goes to the auditor in a batch. It's not a piece by piece by piece.
Right, but you're not gonna get your money until they go to sell the house 10 years, 20 years from now.
No. So this is why.
You're gonna do it as an
flavor-
assessment.
It is an assessment, and they have a certain amount of time to pay it off, depending on the flavor of the program. Every city does this a little differently. In Westerville's case, if they go through and do your blocks, let's just say it's $400 a block, as an example, and they had to do 3 blocks, as an example, all right, and it's $1,200, okay? The $1,200, the way Westerville does it is they put it onto your taxes, but it's not collected in 6 months. You don't get hammered. It's spread over a 5-year period. is how they do it there.
Right, so you're talking
West
about $300 waiting 5 years to get your money. I mean, I'm just saying it's a nightmare, it's a hassle, it's a, there is not a right way and a wrong way.
No,
I mean, I
there's
would
not.
agree with that, because again, okay, so now let's say you have 5 people that opt out. You're still in the same situation.
You gotta go inspect it.
You still have to go inspect it, and here's what I would say, you do have certain people that are, I'll just, have it done because it's easier that way. Not me, I will call every single contractor until I find somebody to beat that price, and I promise you I will find it. I'm the queen of cheap, so, but it will be done right. I mean, I would also agree with that, I wouldn't go,
So
I mean,
people.
to eliminate or to, minimize inefficiencies, and maybe this is crazy, but I've always felt this way. I mean, sidewalks are a public good. You could eliminate a lot of inefficiencies if the village covers all the costs.
yeah, sure.
No,
That's all.
that's correct, so that is one way to do it, and some places do
Seems
do
like
that
that's a
in certain
minority
circumstances.
view, but it always
is.
has made sense to me, but.
Most places do require.
Our village couldn't afford it.
Yeah,
We
most-
would go, I mean, we would be.
Really? I have no idea.
No way could our village, we can't fix the sidewalk, we can't even fix the curbs over there, we can't fix, I mean, we don't have this building because we want it.
Sidewalks are nice because unlike the public right of way, some of them last quite a long time. I mean, if they're taken care of, and you really run into more problems of, maybe 20 years down the road, you've got a crack maybe, and maybe in 3 years you've got a heave, right? I mean, it's different for each block.
As
And
the trees
Yeah.
that they plant at the street,
And hopefully the trees we've selected will stay small as
Hopefully.
we planned on it, and because we pick smaller tree species for that
Yeah.
very purpose. Now, one of the items, it really comes down to what council's overall preference is gonna be in implementing the sidewalk program, because again, the devil is in those details.
it is.
And there will be several things presented when it makes it that far to say, okay, here's how.
So if we
this
don't
doesn't-
even need to
this doesn't-
decide, then why can't we just do here's option A, here's option B, and let them make the decision?
You can give, what I would recommend is, here's your draft
It won't matter
program.
what we come up with.
Yeah, here's your draft program. What you do from a process standpoint is you make any changes you like here, you don't like it, fine, we can rewrite it, but if this works as a skeleton for it, we send it up. And then council's job is then to go look at the ordinances and the examples of how it's implemented and what flavor of program they want. How do they wanna charge fees? Do they wanna be free? Do they want everyone to pay for it individually and we just enforce it? How do we do it? That's where that comes in. Your recommendation is more on you're looking at the surface program and here's how we want it to work. We like this, that's why we use Westerville's example, it's fairly simple. And then council's gonna look at all the ordinances that Westerville's implemented because that's an easy way to do it.
Right.
And then they're gonna tweak the model, right? Who's paying for what and how it's being implemented.
Does council have any obligation to adhere in any way to what we're recommending on this?
No, they don't. Now,
So let's give them an A and a B.
yeah.
Here's
so-
A, here's B.
But
So-
how do we recommend, if I don't agree with what this says in entirety, how do I
Well, first of
recommend
all,
it?
here's the thing. The group, the voting members here, 5 of you, make that decision. If you, from a discussion standpoint, have an issue with something, you very well could be the majority view, you could be the minority view. The majority view is going to vote, Eric, change this paragraph, scratch this, add this, right? Then we bring it back, everybody then votes again, and again, you may be like, that sucks, but you're one vote, right? It's a 4-1 at that point, and it goes up the chain. That's just the way it works. So, and then council goes through their process to approve it, or change it. And this will, I'm hopeful that they'll, because of the timing, they'll speed this up, but this is one of those that when they get into the nuts and bolts, it may take a couple months for them to get through, quite frankly. I don't have any doubt that that's why we're kinda trying to do it now.
Does it happen very often that they accept what we come up with?
Yeah,
I'm
in
not
general.
sure if that's,
In general,
know.
if you've made a number, so as examples, you've made a number of ordinance changes over the years since I've been here. Most of those have been accepted.
I think the only thing was the landscape architect was probably the only thing we
Yeah,
didn't.
and that was, they
Not
they still
changing
paid for, they still appropriated money for that, and they still,
Yeah, part of
just
it.
charged.
I'm saying
the thing,
without
so-
changing anything.
No, I mean, there's always, any time, so if we use legislation, because this is a form of legislation, right, because they gotta implement legislation to make this work, okay? There's always gonna be tweaked, right? There's something that comes up, because at that stage, once you recommend it up, see, this is a tried and true code, so I know this code that backs this exists, and it's an easy fix. We're not reinventing the wheel here for that purpose. But something like chickens, as an example, took a little longer because it was a little bit of a reinvention. We went through this body, that's the Bexley basis, it got changed, it got to legislative committee, it got altered again, you had a few more things added to it, it took a little while, took a year, finally gets out, and it's approved, yay! So, but that's the way the process flows for legislation. But most of the stuff has gone up and been approved.
And I think they're gonna tweak it, because just like Eric and I are having the conversation, we don't agree, but we also don't disagree.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
fighting through Franklin County and waiting 5 years to get your money seems like the stupidest thing, but also turning into a bill collector trying, or, continually marking an X and they're not gonna do it, how long do you give them
Yeah.
to do it? Because it is a safety factor. I mean, we still can't go put them in jail for not doing it, so if we don't have some sort, like, I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying, there still has to be repercussion if they don't do it.
Correct.
So the moral of the story is, I don't want it, I would rather just, his option is great, but you can't just go spend another $10,000, $20,000 on top of, it's not.
And most places just don't do that. They-
No.
And there's a reason for it, it's expensive.
Should we investigate what that would cost?
You figure
I mean,
each one is probably $300 to $500 at
I would
times
say
to replace one?
I would say, yeah, 300's a reasonable zone to be in for that.
Yeah,
And-
so
And we'd have to count the
$300
blocks up.
and just assume, just at 10.
Yeah.
And-
Each standard house, we're not talking corner lots, cause there's a lot.
That's a lot more,
But,
yeah.
but each frontage, roughly 60 feet of frontage has probably 60 divided by 4, so you're looking at 15 blocks essentially.
I can put 7 in front of each house.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends on how big you're counting the block. The block should be about 4 feet long. So each house is roughly 60-foot width lot. Some of them, and that's altered, right? 50 is a little small, a couple of them are 50, but 60 is the average. But of course, cul-de-sacs, you're gonna have different widths and stuff. I'm talking on the straight line, right?
We're gonna have our own plenty to pay for as
Yeah.
well. I mean, all of
We
the
do.
corner, all along the fencing and all of that is ours.
Your armor tiles are yours, things like that.
Yeah, so those are already gonna cost a
Ramps.
pretty penny. So I guess my point is, it doesn't matter what him and I can go back and forth, and you and I can go, I mean, you like the idea of just, again, I don't disagree, it's probably cheaper and quicker and whatever if people are willing to pay for it, but
Well,
if they
you're-
don't pay for it, then you're sending it to Franklin County, but you might do that anyways.
You're spending more time, whichever way you go, is either on the end or on the beginning.
There you go.
That you're inefficient.
At least it is charging interest at the auditors though, so there's that. For whatever that's worth, I don't know if that.
Yeah, they'll make them pay at the end of the day. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. The auditors, see, most private collectors don't have access to the auditor, right? We have access as a municipality to the auditor. The auditor is our bill collector, and someone will pay at some point.
Right.
In certain cases, in this market, it's not a big deal for houses. If somebody goes belly up in a house and it gets reappropriated at the sale, you'll get the thing pretty quick. In some places, after the Great Recession, houses languished for 5, 6, 7 years, and it took a while to get the money out of any liens that may have occurred. So it all's dependent, but at the end of the day, the money will come back to you, so.
So yeah, I think you could just stick it where it fits, cause they're gonna make a change to it. I mean, here's the deal. Brian may agree with Eric and somebody else may agree with,
Yeah.
so it's not gonna matter. I mean, they're gonna have the same issue. I mean, it's not a yes or no. I
No,
mean,
it's
it's a, which way do you want,
It's a model.
I don't
Yeah.
know, I wouldn't know what direction.
I wouldn't either. I think it's just a matter of sticking, I think, people have to think long and hard as to how many hours Calvin's gonna go, and again, I keep using
Whoever
Calvin's
it
name.
is.
I mean, it could be our maintenance person that
Correct.
goes over and marks them, and then, again, who's gonna go inspect them, and then who's gonna send out all the bills, and who's gonna, I mean, that's gonna be a full-time job, just
The program
maintaining.
creates hours regardless,
Very much so.
But at the same time, the only other easy solution, even then you still got staff time, is if you pay for everything, but you're not gonna do that, so you have to maintenance the program somehow now that you have sidewalks.
Maybe they'll agree to it.
Yeah.
You never know
Yeah,
with
you
that
never
group,
know.
as long as they wanna write, somebody wants to write a check for it.
So then do we just pass this through?
Why don't you, like I said, you don't have to do it till next meeting, which we're at 9, we need to discuss our next meeting schedule.
Yeah, where are we, I mean,
We're about to-
for my sake, if not everyone else's as well, like, I would like to know where are we in terms of priorities and deadlines? Vis-a-vis the animal code, is that something that mayor and council want us to dig in on?
I think we have a bunch of other stuff that's much more important.
Yeah, and I think is the council, I guess, this weekend, is that when you're doing your whole? plan?
No,
No,
strategic
no.
planning was last week, and
Okay.
I'm gonna say it in my terms.
We
It
didn't
was,
accomplish a lot.
It was an hour of the lakes are important, communication is important, green space is important, and
It was the maintenance of,
Then you jumped out the window.
it was lakes,
Seriously.
the facility, maintenance of the properties over there.
We wanna
and,
make sure that we get
technology,
moving on
the
those things.
website.
That was the
Those are
meeting.
our 4 big priorities.
So green space, obviously, this body's already working towards, we'll have more to discuss next time. I will have your electronic maps and things updated at that point, and you'll have that in front of you. So,
Well, could
continue
we
that
just sort of
discussion.
look over the animal thing and, I mean, it might not be a priority, but
You are-
could we kind of start,
Yeah,
Does
unless,
that
unless
even
there's
make
a
sense?
priority that council and mayor want us to look at, then.
so yeah, so there's
Why
two,
not?
if I may, there's two different views on this. So this body has the authority to look at anything the voting members decide to look at. So if
Okay.
there's a majority of you that say, we want to proceed in this direction, you may, you have the ability to, you can take the view that I don't wanna do anything without, you know, in some cases it's perfectly appropriate.
Yeah.
I don't wanna do anything without council and,
I think
Yeah,
that's
council's,
the way
council's
to
direction.
proceed.
For the-
You don't
for the
want your
s-
feelings
especially-
For the sake of
Yeah.
efficiency, I prefer the latter,
Yeah.
certainly at this time, I mean,
Or, you
yeah.
know, or
Yeah.
even just. like,
But-
And at this point, I can't really say I speak
Oh, I
on
couldn't
behalf
either.
of council, because I'm trying to figure out what we
Yeah.
got going on.
So this is a valid question at the next council meeting, you know, we can, if there's something specific you would like to work on, someone would like to work on, the body would like to work on, if you would like to get council's opinion, I'm sure council can, and they can even handle this by email, right? We don't even have to necessarily, go through the meeting to do this if you just like some direction, because that's all you're asking. You don't need them as a formal authority to tell you, they can ask you to do things, but at the end of the day, the body can take things up on their own.
Okay.
But I
Yeah,
like to think that the council is going to start asking.
That's right.
Planning and zoning to start working on stuff. That's where maybe we can segue into
Yeah.
whole business here is, I'm gonna keep bringing this up until this group starts talking about, we've already talked about it earlier today, what do we wanna make people get permits for?
So,
That
as
to
we
me-
discuss this, it would be good to go through the body of work, present a report, so you have something other than just conjecture to discuss and this and that. We wanna put it in black and white, and then you can clearly
Tweak it.
determine what you can, and what you're gonna find is there's gonna be some nebulous references, and as there normally are in code. And then you can then decide, do I clean that up to make it, or do I call it out and make it completely allowable? Do I not care? Do I want propane tanks for yard art? It doesn't matter. You guys can make a decision for however
That's
you
what
want.
I hate about you guys twisting my stuff around. I thought.
It's a facetious joke.
Okay,
I'm making
well,
an example.
I'm sorry.
I'm making a legitimate example. It doesn't matter, right? The body can take up and make recommendations on what they wanna collect. At the end of the day, it goes up to council and say, here's our code corrections, here's what we think. And council may look at the one of the codes and said, hey, why aren't they requiring patios? We're gonna stick that back in, right? It can go, as we know, it can go in either direction, but your job to start is to make recommendations, and we wanna get you some documentation so that you have clear reference points and can see what's clear, what's not clear, what doesn't
Yeah.
exist, what should exist, right?
can council come up with their own list?
They can do it by motion, but that's a different priority. When you say a list, you mean a priority list for P and Z.
Tony gets tired of waiting for us, can he go in and say, we wanna
He
come up
can-
with our list
Yeah,
of what
council-
should be permitted? and what
Council,
shouldn't?
so here's how that would work, for example. Council can do it on the fly and make a motion, hey, we want P and Z to look at this issue, right? We want them to look at trees in the bog or something, I don't know, it could be anything, right? We want you to look at turtles, I don't care. So that's
Please,
an
yeah,
example.
So
Or,
I'm talking more about
Or-
specifically
so-
permits, can
so-
they come up with the list of things they want to
no,
permit?
well, yes and no. So this is an administrative function too. So as we already discussed, we're gonna prepare a report, right?
Okay.
That's gonna be important, right? So in any particular issue, council can say, I've got a list of priorities. Tony can say, here's my list of priorities I want for P and Z. Council, do you agree? Can I get a motion to direct P and Z to start doing that? And council can vote on with full majority to make that happen, right? That's how that works. So there's different methods.
I would honestly, I'd appreciate that. And I'll just speaking for myself, I mean, there are only so many hours in a day, like, I'm happy to dive in and commit some of that precious bandwidth, but like, there better be some real focus on what
Yeah.
we're, you
Do you
know.
guys wanna work on the lake?
No.
So
I would
You're
say,
here.
I'm sorry.
You get to do it.
I would say yes, I would,
Green
but.
space is a thing that is a priority, and you're working on it.
Come on, Tony, we might have a chance in
Already
this
there.
one.
Well, but it's the same thing as if it comes from planning.
Doesn't matter.
No, because that's more a matter of my time,
They
but I have
can't.
something to
Yeah.
prep and you'll have it next time.
Just no
We
consensus
have other
at all
things
on council, or
You can
what's
see, where
the?
would you talk about green space in this 2 hours?
When it comes to the lakes, we don't.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
you know, some people don't wanna cut any of the trees back, that's a topic in itself.
Yeah.
It's a,
I'm still trying
So-
to figure out what people perceive the problem to be.
and that's part of the problem, you're
The
correct.
problem is in perception. So if I may jump back, scheduling. Let's talk, we're 9:05 now, so let's talk
Okay.
scheduling.
Okay, Eric and I had the little topic that, February 5th, if we had a productive meeting tonight, whether or not it would really be necessary to come in a week. And I am all for Donna's answer. We have a lot to continue to move forward, meaning sidewalks, but is this something that can wait the 2 weeks so everybody has time to read through it, and get that done, and then get on a regular schedule once we get to that point? And, you know, for March, make sure that we have the two. It's ultimately your call. But as far as February 5th, I don't know if we're gonna have enough to do in,
Yeah.
because we're not even gonna have a council meeting between now and then.
No,
So
we won't.
even to find out
Yeah.
what they want us to do, we have, it will be that Saturday.
The other thing I'd like to see happen with council and with the planning and zoning is try to conduct some business via emails.
Right.
You know, we can,
Nobody ever likes it when I email.
Well, no, and I do. I think part of the issue is I don't disagree, it's like 9 out of 10 people don't answer.
well, that's
And
not good.
and that's just it, you can't have a two-way conversation, so a lot of times I sit back and I wait to see if anybody responds, and then nobody responds, and I'm like, okay, well,
In business, I just wanna forewarn you, business conducted via electronic means, not in a public meeting, can run you afoul. You must be careful there.
You can't-
You
You
can
can't make
send-
decisions.
you
Is there a
can-
bright
That's right,
line on
that's
that?
right, but there are cases where people have had discussions that have kind of decided things before they get to the meeting, and that's where you run a little afoul of things. You wanna make sure that anything you send over, and again, I fully encourage you to ask legal counsel their opinion, but I wanna fully encourage you as well that ideas are great, general information, but if you get into discussion that should be had at the public meeting, that's where you should have it for the debate purposes of a vote, not prior, that's the
Well,
strict
in these
rule.
emails, if we do, I wouldn't say make a decision in an email, it just needs to be, that same conversation needs to take place in a public meeting.
The same, but that's the whole thing, you're very much right, the same conversation. There are cases where the judge has made them rehold the public meeting, and they have to go through it word for word, what they did in the email.
Literally reading the
Oh, yeah,
transcripts,
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and then they have to vote and they have to carry it out, so people have won cases regarding that, so just be
I
aware.
think the only thing that I would say is where I don't disagree with Tony on some of these things. What do we wanna talk about? What does council wanna talk about? I mean, instead of, you know, our meeting is on Saturday, and instead of waiting 2 weeks for you guys to find out, oh, this is what they want you guys to start working on or talk about or brainstorm, you know, it's something that, yeah, Tony or I could send out an email and say, you know, council's really interested in the lakes.
Correct.
You know, and this is the section that they're looking at, do you want to, you know, do some research or whatever and bring what you can to the next planning and zoning? Or, you know, again, Westerville City Schools reached out and they're gonna be doing this, I mean, just to be able to give you guys like a heads up so you guys can make your own.
Yeah,
So, I mean, if people are okay with that, but I think the moral of the story is respond, at least say something, hey, I'm too busy to look at this, or whatever. I think if people really wanna communicate via email, people really have to communicate. We have council members that they'll respond to something from over a month ago. They will text me 872 times in one day, but I'll get a response from a month ago, and I'm like, what is that? So it's, again, if you aren't gonna have everybody on board, it's pointless.
Well, we're into the new year with a new mayor, and
And I don't
hoping
shut
that
up.
we can sort of do things differently. And that was my first, suggestion, is that we start trying to do stuff, before the meeting.
Right.
Not wait till the meeting and then
Yeah.
you got an
Yeah,
issue or whatever.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, and you know, and this is just a council blurb, is if you ever do have time to even scroll through the council work session and or the council meetings, it does give you a really good insight into finances. It really does give you an insight into some of the things that we think are priority, or some of the things that we're talking about, you know, whether it be the facility building, whether it be the street issues, or, you know, whatever. So again, you can just have more of an insight of, like, the newsletter's just not enough. I mean, the newsletter's one thing, but just being able to, again, I don't recommend listening to 3 hours and 47 minutes of it, but,
Yeah.
you know, picking and choosing, going into it,
Are
listening
there
to a couple things.
sorry, are there transcripts too?
Yeah,
I just
there's
don't,
minutes.
I don't do video, I do minutes,
Are
but
the
not,
minutes
Yeah.
on Barn?
Yeah,
okay.
they're in our packets. I
So
don't
you
know
have
that they're
to- see, that's
specifically
another one of
online.
the things that we need to improve our website.
The minutes are
You know,
there.
you have to know where to go find the darn
Right.
thing at. They're there, but you gotta go to the council packet
Right.
to get the minutes.
And then you can even request like like we have the finance meetings and all those different meetings, and you can request just transcripts from that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So at least it'll give you an idea of, you know, if we all wanted to go redo streets, can we really afford it? Or, you know, if planning and zoning wants to plan green space, you know, do we have $200,000 just
Yeah.
laying around to go do
Now that-
da-da-da-da-da?
Yeah, I'll make it a point, cause I don't know any of that stuff. I would love to come in and talk with a finance person, et cetera. Does that make sense, just to schedule some meetings? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really would give you an insight as to, you know, what we want to do, what we can do, why we're trying to get grants for different things, and all of the above.
So yeah, so if you go
What do we decide about meetings? I gotta go.
government
So, yeah,
council,
maybe not on the
and then if
fifth,
you go
since
to over
council
here,
won't
there's a
have
little
time
button
for
for
that,
minutes,
just
and
do
then
one in
it'll take you right,
February.
it takes a couple
I'm
steps,
not-
but it'll
I'm
get
not
you there.
gonna fit that
There you
in.
go,
Yeah,
cool.
so-
Thank you.
Are you saying the 12th? I'm not sure about the 12th for me.
The
but-
12th is not our meeting
No,
date.
yeah, it would be.
12th is not our meeting, the 19th is our meeting date.
Okay.
So we will be out here on the 19th,
And not the 5th.
not the 5th, as long as none of you vote for it, it's, we can cancel that meeting and we'll see you all for the 19th.
And then starting in March, I don't disagree. I think you need to have, we need to
The
make
meeting will
sure
be
we're
the
back
4th.
on that.
Yep.
Yeah, back on the first of the month, and,
4th and 18th
yeah.
in March, regular scheduled meetings.
So before we adjourn though, Tony, is there anything other than, like I do see a lot of merit in working on the permits, but is there anything like home occupation or whatever that you want us to
You
specifically?
know, I mean, the home occupation is really not that important to me, other
Or
than
something
it's
that
been-
is important,
It's something
it's just
that,
something that's been ongoing.
It'll be part of the permits, we can talk about it, because there's a lot to talk about with the permits, so that's gonna be part of the permit review, because we require a
Yeah.
permit for home occupation. So at that point, you can discuss what's an appropriate use of home occupation, what is a home occupation, blah, 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 right? We can go into whatever detail you so
I mean,
desire.
I guess I'm back to, I mean, really, it's the green space planning.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's correct, and that's already on our agenda, and we'll
It's
be,
already there, I wouldn't add anything new.
And is that what we're gonna do
the
on the
19th?
19th?
Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
Okay, so
We'll have
that,
new
that's
maps.
priority is green
Yes.
space?
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's been,
that's, to me, one of the things I think that's always helpful is just having like one specific, you know, again, do the green space planning and then like the sidewalk.
We can get a
Get
good
that
orchard
knocked out.
conversation.
Like-
going.
Okay, sounds good, yeah.
That goes straight to, and
Sounds
if
good.
you have
And
questions
everything
about,
that we
you know, how we wanna make sure that
And
that gets.
honestly, I mean, my wife would be
Sounds
thrilled if I
Again,
got rid of some of
I
my
have
trees, so I just donate.
Haven't, again, let them decide.
and I'll have a big,
Yes, I mean, again, I don't disagree,
You'll win.
No, I don't.
but I also,
Yeah.
What kind of?
I want, I would never have
the only homework
them do it, I
I
would do it myself.
need of you is.
But I would
What's
also
our
do it
second,
myself, so then I start
the
to-
second
Yes.
March date, is that the
So
25th,
what
do you know?
what is the max?
No.
Let them-
No, doesn't
they
mean
don't
not
do
to.
it.
Yeah, are we gonna have two
So I mean,
meetings
I
in March?
understand I'm not right, but I
Oh,
also understand they're
okay.
wrong, like, I don't want
But it'll
to.
be like the first
There is no
week
right
and the
answer.
third
If,
week.
if,
Okay.
if they would all pay their bill and they would all just get it done in the first 2 weeks when they get a notice, then it would be great.
Yeah, but that's not gonna happen.
So,
Mother,
keep
you're
that in mind,
crazy.
whatever you're focused
On that note, okay.
On that
So we're
note.
gonna adjourn at.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 9:14.
Second,
Third.
All in favor?
hey, our second March meeting is at the 18th, is that right?
The,
18th, or
yeah,
no?
first and the 18th, whatever.
Fourth and 18th?
Fourth and
Fourth and
18th, yeah, whatever it is, yeah, 4th and 18th, thank you.
19th February, 4th, 18th March.
Yes.
Somebody text me and remind me.
Hey, Mayor,
Huh?
you know, when you guys get together about the permitting,
You want me to call you?
I'd like to.
You'd like to come? Maybe we'll go to the bar
Go
on
down
that
and
one,
get,
Eric.
and get a police officer here while you're there.
Hey, you know what, if you come in, we got a couple of them downstairs, I'm just saying.
Well, I'll tell you, they used to.
It's not a matter, so if I
I'm
may,
sure they had
it's not a,
code.
it's not a
Been
controversial.
in the building.
No, it's not.
No, because all it is that I'm gonna prepare a report for you to review, and you
Bring-
can happy to review within.
Bring,
That's it.
okay, so I want,
Make sure in that report that you
Oh.
put the code